Ooh, you're diving into the dark and icy waters of Antarctica. The eerie blue darkness is enveloping you, reminiscent of the vast expanse of open space. In these depths, where you least expect to encounter any living creature, you suddenly hear a loud, strange sound. A quacking noise, as if a giant duck was hidden in the deep. In 1960, researchers first recorded this sound and named it bioduck. Clever. For decades, they tried to unravel the mystery of its source. Was it a giant kraken? An extraterrestrial spaceship that had crashed into the ocean? A mysterious sea monster? Or perhaps an enormous duck? There were many versions, one more bizarre than the other. Oceanographers detected similar sounds in other locations as well. Off the western coast of Australia and near New Zealand, they recorded similar but higher-pitched signals, which they named bio-goose. It seems the creepy atmosphere of the story disappears with such names. Anyways, these sounds were not isolated incidents. They happened multiple times with consistent intervals. Many initially thought the source must be mechanical, given the regularity of the sounds. However, studying the oceans in the latter half of the 20th century was challenging because of limited technologies. Nevertheless, scientists persisted in collecting data on bioduck and biogoose, driven by their insatiable curiosity. As more data accumulated, so did the theories. But scientists eventually uncovered the mystery. Bioduck turned out to be a form of communication with a biological origin. When researchers analyzed the repeating sounds, they noticed that the signals never overlapped. One source would speak while the others remained silent, suggesting a form of communication. The question remained, which ocean creature possessed such an extraordinary method of communicating through varied frequency sounds? The answer, as many have guessed, is whales. Scientists compared the bioduck sound from Antarctica with the calls of minke whales and found striking similarities. The biogoose sounds from the waters off Australia and New Zealand likely belong to other species or very young minke whales. This discovery, however, only deepened the mystery. What purpose did these sounds serve? Were the whales discussing their dinner plans, laughing at the humans recording their voices, or perhaps sharing deep insights about the universe? The possibilities were endless, but the most astonishing revelation was that humans might one day learn to communicate with these magnificent creatures. Communicating with whales is no longer a far-fetched idea. Scientists from the University of California have already established contact with a humpback whale named Twain. In a groundbreaking experiment, researchers conducted a 20-minute conversation with the marine mammal. Here's how they did it. The specialists went on a marine expedition to the coast of Alaska, where they recorded the sounds of a group of humpback whales. Then they played these sounds through speakers, sending the signals back into the ocean. The recorded sounds resembled a greeting, like, "Hey, what's up?" but in the whale language. These greetings are used by whales to call each other or indicate their location. Now, soon after sending the signals, the researchers received a response. Twain approached the boat, circled it, and replied with a "hey" of its own. This marked the beginning of the first ever human-whale conversation. For 20 minutes, the scientists sent 36 signals to Twain, and each time the whale responded. Moreover, it waited for time intervals before answering. That is, the team received a response from the whale, waited 10 seconds, and turned on the sound again. Researchers then waited 10 seconds and answered. It seems that Twain was a very delicate interlocutor. Maybe it was a gentleman in the whale world, who knows? Or maybe it was simply intrigued by the unusual interaction. The signals used in this communication belonged to a group of whales that included Twain. It's likely that the researchers had recorded Twain's own sounds and used them to communicate with it. In a sense, Twain was conversing with itself. Now let's continue our journey and venture into the deepest oceanic trench on Earth, the Mariana Trench. A quick reminder, the Mariana Trench is a colossal chasm in the ocean floor, stretching over 1,500 miles south of Japan and reaching a depth of nearly 36,000 feet at its deepest point. To put that into perspective, the height of the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building, is like 1/10 of the Mariana Trench's depth. Now imagine this. In this deep, dark abyss, scientists recorded a strange sound. Unlike bioduct, this sound resembled something from a science fiction movie, a low rumble, followed by a metallic ping. Reminiscent of the sounds made by spaceships in sci-fi movies. Researchers named this mysterious phenomenon biotwang noises. Scientists first detected this strange sound in 2014 during an acoustic survey of the Mariana Trench, and they quickly identified its source: whales, specifically Bride's whales. Using artificial intelligence, researchers analyzed around 200,000 hours of audio recordings from the ocean and found matches with a group of Bride's whales. Like other animals, these whales use sounds as a form of communication. Now, did you know what else was found at the bottom of the Mariana Trench? A plastic bottle. It's unlikely it was done by a kraken or a whale or some type of monster. Everything is simpler here. The bottle ended up there because of a human. But that's a topic for another video. Okay, let's deal with one more sound. No whales this time, just a mysterious sound in the loneliest place on Earth. This place is called Point Nemo, and that's why it's so lonely. Located in the South Pacific Ocean, Point Nemo is the most remote spot from any land. The nearest island is 1,450 nautical miles away. It's about the same long distance from land in all other directions. Moreover, here, there's almost no marine life, since few water currents reach this spot, and therefore few nutrients are supplied. In a sense, it's a water desert. And so, in 1997, oceanographers recorded a very strange and frightening sound coming from the depths in the area of Point Nemo. It was something gigantic and scary. People called it the bloop. As soon as journalists found out about this phenomenon, people around the world began to invent the most fantastic versions. The most popular of them was that the sound source was a giant sea monster, kraken, or some other creature. The hype around the bloop didn't last very long. Scientists managed to find out the nature of the mysterious noise. It turned out it belonged to an iceberg. When they crack and collapse, they create powerful ultra-low frequency sounds that can be heard from a very long distance. To confirm this version, scientists recorded the sounds of other icebergs and heard something similar to the bloop. Oh, by the way, Point Nemo is so lonely that space agencies drop out-of-service satellites here. Space objects just fall in the water. There's a 99% chance that no animal or human will be harmed by falling debris in this lonely place. That's why many people call it the satellite cemetery. But what if, someday, a spaceship from another planet falls here? What if it has already fallen in Point Nemo and sometimes emits an emergency signal that breaks through the ocean? Ooh. All the mysteries you have heard have already been solved. How about we end this video with a mystery that still baffles scientists? Meet upsweep. One of the most mysterious sounds ever recorded in the ocean. It's not just noise, it's a series of short ascending tones repeated at intervals of several seconds. It was first discovered in 1991 using hydrophones installed in the Pacific Ocean. At first, oceanographers suggested that upsweep could be associated with volcanic activity or underwater earthquakes. But the seasonal nature of the sound and its intensity change depending on the time of year, which rules out these versions. People began to consider hypotheses related to the biological life of the ocean. They studied the migration routes of marine animals and their behavior at different times of the year. However, despite all efforts, the sound source has not been identified. Some studies suggest that upsweep may be associated with certain species of fish or other marine animals that make sounds for communication or navigation, but no one has been able to prove it. Fitness trackers and fancy smartwatches are fine for monitoring your heart rate and even the miles you cover on a run. They're not so good at measuring the number of calories you've burned, though. A 2017 study from the Stanford University School of Medicine showed that fitness trackers and smartwatches have error margins of less than 5% when it comes to measuring heart rates. That's pretty good, so you can be confident in whatever reading you're getting. The problem is with the devices measuring energy expenditure accurately or calendars burned. Even the best was off by an average of 27%. The worst was off by a crazy 93%. That means they're very unreliable and shouldn't be trusted. Fitness trackers don't work well for measuring calories because we all have different heights, weights, diets, and many other things. That means we all burn calories at completely different rates. The trackers are often programmed with a preset average height and weight. So, if you're going to use one, take it with a grain of salt, unless you're trying to reduce your sodium intake. Sunscreens have only one job to do, and that's protecting us from the harmful ultraviolet rays. In 2017, though, a study found that many popular brands failed to protect at all, with only 1 in 4 working. Most sunscreens didn't protect users from ultraviolet A and B rays at all. Some manufacturers also claimed that these products had an SPF of over 50, which sounds very high quality, but the actual SPF was much lower than that. The misleading labeling means we aren't as protected as we think when we're at the beach. So when you're out shopping for sunscreen, make sure you look at the ingredients and apply more than you think you should. Ooh, sports drinks, an essential item for anyone working out. These bright-colored drinks are filled with electrolytes that will increase your performance and rehydrate you fast. The problem is, we're not all athletes, so most people would be better if they just drink water instead. Sports drinks are made up of water with some minerals and lots of sugar, coloring, and flavor. Those minerals are electrolytes, which can help our bodies go longer. Your exercise habits, the duration, and the intensity of your training all come into whether you really need that extra boost. While sports drinks can benefit athletes engaged in long or intense training, they're not really necessary for most gym goers. Sports drinks are probably pointless if you're only doing light to moderate exercise, like walking or jogging, over a short period of time. After using a toaster for most of your life, most people still haven't figured out how to get a perfect heat setting. It turns out that burnt toast is probably just down to a simple misconception. Those numbers on your toaster aren't heat levels at all. They're actually minutes. The dial is basically just a timer. That means all you need to do is look up how long it takes to toast certain things, and you'll never ruin your breakfast again. Hey, I like burnt toast. I'm used to it. Most of us rely on wireless technology to carry out normal everyday tasks. It can be very frustrating when technology stops working and interrupts your day. In fact, the only thing more frustrating might be not knowing why it isn't working. The worst culprit here is your cell phone. It'll often show really great reception, but somehow can't make a phone call. The bars on a cell phone actually don't mean anything. The way they receive the signal differs a lot between different makes and models of phone. There's even a big difference between what the bars mean from one phone to another. Meanwhile, watching a progress bar showing the percentage of time left to complete a download on our phones or PC can be tedious. Sometimes they just seem to be stuck doing nothing. Bad news, they don't really work. At least not in the way we think. The system updates the progress bar when certain milestones are reached. A progress bar at 50% doesn't mean half the file has been downloaded. Almost all the files could have been downloaded. The point of them is to give you something visual to look at. Progress bars aren't accurate because downloads and transfers have too many variables beyond the system's control. Internet speeds and network availability are the coordinators of how quickly a download will complete, while your computer's hard drive determines how fast things process and information gets put in the right files. It's probably best to make a coffee or set things up to download while you're in bed, instead of constantly checking up on an incorrect progress bar. Elsewhere, stopping at a crosswalk and pressing the button hoping the walk signal will come up might just be a waste of your time. It turns out that all that button pushing could be for nothing. Some crosswalk buttons need to be pressed, but others don't do anything at all. The crossing symbol will just light up whenever it wants to. Some crosswalks even switch between needing and not needing a button press, depending on the time of day. That said, it can be difficult for all of us pedestrians to determine whether a crosswalk button works or not. When in doubt, just push the button anyway. You don't want to stand around waiting for no reason. With more people going into the water and sharks, well, living in the water, the fear of bumping into a not-so-friendly shark is ever increasing. This shared water space has pushed many companies to try to create shark repellents. This sounds like a good idea that should help keep both people and sharks more safe. Companies have tried everything – sprays, wetsuits, magnets, wax, and even electronic devices to repel the scary fish. The bad news is none of these products are confirmed to actually work. One, in particular, makes the sound of an orca. Sharks aren't too fond of being in the same area as them, but does pretending you're an orca stop a shark from biting you? If you feel safer using them, then go right ahead. But if you're looking for a shark deterrent that's 100% effective, it's just not available. Psst, here's what actually works. Stay out of the water. Rushing into an elevator and repeatedly pushing the closed door button in the US is basically a huge waste of time unless you've got the special trick. In 1990, the US passed a Disabilities Act for elevators, which meant that elevators had to ensure that someone with a disability had time to get inside one. If you're on crutches, use a cane, or travel in a wheelchair, you don't have to worry about someone accidentally closing the elevator doors before you've had a chance to pass through them. There's one important loophole to this. If you're an emergency or maintenance worker, you'll have access to keys and codes that make that button operational. This is just another example of a placebo button you're invited to push, just to make you feel like you've done something. That impatient finger poking isn't doing anything. Getting a bit warm or cold in the office? Better adjust that thermostat. Unfortunately, in the vast majority of office buildings, the system controls are kept inside air ducts, not on the wall. Technicians install dummy thermostats to give workers the illusion that they're dramatically changing the air conditioning or heat. Some are set to change 1 or 2 degrees, but they're often not connected to anything at all. Dummy thermostats came about around the 1960s. As heating prices rose, building leases often required employers to stay within specific temperatures. Faced with this problem, fake thermostats became the new rage for businesses. They offer people some feeling of control while keeping the temperature in the right range. Now, ever come across some premium PC cleaning software that promises to clean your PC and make it go as fast as when you purchased it? Yeah! These third-party PC cleaners are often made to seem like they really work, but they usually don't do much of anything at all. They'll detect non-problems and list them as problems. The worst example of this is when they list browser cookies and temporary files as having an effect on the computer's speed, when they don't. It's better to stick to the operating system's built-in cleaner. It'll work fine if you ever need to clean your computer and save you having to splash out on one that does pretty much the same thing. Well, that's all I got. Time to burn some toast. Okay, so right after being processed, plastic water bottles aren't the size you buy at the store. Even a gallon water bottle starts its life as a small tube. Later, it gets heated, inflated, and shaped into the bottle you know. Boy, I can relate to the heated and inflated part. Now, not all potato chips are actually fried potato slices. Some companies use a mix of potato flakes, cornstarch, and water to produce chips. This mix is then pressed into a dough, and chips are cut out from it with the help of shape molds. Then the chips are fried, which takes about 11 seconds. After that, all excess oil gets drained, and the chips are seasoned and packed. There's a legend that only 2 people in the world know the original recipe that gives Coca-Cola its signature taste. These people aren't allowed to travel together so that the recipe never gets lost. Even though it's just a popular legend, not many people are aware of all the ingredients of the world-famous drink. One of them used to be the cola nut. Hey, I used to be a cola nut. You can find these nuts inside the fruit of the cola tree. Each fruit is about the size of a chestnut and has between 2 and 5 cola nuts inside. The cola fruit and nuts are packed with caffeine. Nowadays, Coca-Cola is said to no longer contain the cola nut extract. It's rumored to have been replaced with artificial flavoring. But since the drink's recipe is such a closely guarded secret, no one knows for sure. Hey, maybe we can ask Pepsi. These days, it's quite simple to make a mirror. Producers take a regular sheet of glass as a base. Then they apply a reflective coating. This usually means spraying a thin layer of either silver or aluminum onto the back of the sheet of glass. This process is called silvering. Some kinds of car wax contain carnauba wax, also called Brazil wax. That's a vegetable wax people get from the fronds of the carnauba tree growing in Brazil. To get the wax, the leaves of this tree first get dried and then beaten. Ooh, ooh, ow, ow! This is how you can remove the powdery wax. Now, pencils. First, their leads are made by mixing clay and graphite powder. This mixture is then baked. After that, pencil bodies are made. If they're wooden, the material should be chosen carefully. It should be soft enough to sharpen, but tough enough not to break. When the pre-cut sections are delivered to the factory, they have grooves cut in them. These grooves will later accommodate the leads. Then special glue is added. This way the leads will stay in place. Next, every second section is sent to a special conveyor, and the leads are placed in the grooves. Then another section is glued to the one filled with leads. We get a large multi-pencil sandwich. Sandwich, I'm getting hungry. The two parts of this sandwich get compressed and cut lengthwise. Then they're shaped and form separate pencils. Lava lamps were invented in the middle of the 20th century. The magic happening inside is due to the right amount and type of ingredients. Two of them are oil and paraffin wax. The oil helps the wax heat up, and once it's heated, it starts rising up slowly. Once the blob reaches the surface, it cools down and sinks back to the bottom. Now, nutmeg is a strongly flavored spice used in many cuisines all over the globe. Despite its name, nutmeg isn't a nut. It's technically a seed native to the Spice Islands and East Indies tropical islands. Nutmeg grows on trees, and the seed itself is sealed in a shell. Once it's ripe, the outer shell cracks open. Chocolate comes from the cacao tree, which is native to the Amazon. These trees also grow in Central and South America and some other tropical climates in Africa and Asia. The seeds of the cacao tree are very bitter. They have to be fermented to develop the flavor you're used to. After this process, the beans get dried, cleaned, and roasted. The shell is removed, and crumbled bits of dried cocoa beans are ground to cocoa mass. This mass is then used in the production of all kinds of chocolatey things. In the past, people used to chew different types of aromatic substances, including beeswax, tree resin, or even aromatic twigs. But modern-day chewing gum is made of a natural latex-like ingredient called chicle. It gets extracted from trees. Modern marbles are made from glass. The first step is to melt recycled glass and previously rejected marbles that turned out to be too small or too big. About 15 hours later, the molten glass is ready for processing. A special cutter bar moves through the stream of liquid glass every half a second. It separates small pieces of glass. They're future marbles called slugs. The faster the cutter bar moves, the smaller the marbles are. After that, the still hot slugs are sent through several constantly rotating metal rollers. They keep the slugs apart and also cool them. These ridged rollers also give the marbles their spherical shape. As for the marble's final coloring, it's determined already at the melting stage. That's when the air passes the coloring through the glass. You can find springs everywhere, from tools, electronics, and toys to pens and mattresses. They come in different forms, for example, torsion, wire, extension, or compression springs. When a spring is made, a steel cord is passed to a dereeler. How thick this cord is depends on what kind of spring we need. The dereeler unwinds the roll and sends the cord to a computer-controlled forming machine. That's where the cord gets coiled to the needed length and cut into pieces. Now, to produce tomato ketchup, one of my favorites, you need tomato paste or puree, sugar, or some other natural sweetener, salt, spices, vinegar, and onion powder. First, the needed volume of the tomato paste is heated while being constantly stirred. Then other ingredients are added as well. Before the ketchup is bottled, it has to go through several cooling stages. Meanwhile, bottles are already aligned and waiting to be filled with the ketchup. This usually happens automatically. At the end of this process, caps and labels are added to the bottles. Cashew nuts are rich in plant protein, healthy fats, and fiber, and low in sugar. But they're some of the most expensive nuts out there, and no wonder. The cashew tree, native to tropical regions of Brazil, produces a long stalk called a cashew apple. It resembles a small pear. Well then, why don't they just call it a cashew pear? Anyway, at the end of this stalk, there's a kidney-shaped nut. It's protected by a double shell that contains a poisonous, oily substance. It's the main reason cashews aren't sold in their shells like peanuts or pistachios. Cashews need to be dried and roasted first. This removes the toxins and makes the shell brittle and much easier to remove. Nail polish, as we know it today, is a rather modern invention. It became popular at the beginning of the 20th century. Different companies use different kinds of chemicals and ingredients to produce nail polish. But one of these ingredients is always the same: nitrocellulose. This substance is actually liquid, but it gets mixed with plasticizers. They make nail polish more flexible and allow you to wear it longer. The process of creating ice cream sandwiches is pretty simple. First, ice cream gets whipped. It's done to add some air. The resulting substance is then sent to the next part of the assembly. There, 2 lines of wafers are already sandwiched together, and ice cream is simultaneously injected between them. It happens so quickly that more than 100 ice cream sandwiches can be made in a minute. How many can I eat in a minute? There are all kinds of plastic brooms out there, but there's one type that's made from recycled plastic bottles. With people buying 1 million plastic bottles all over the world, it's a cool way to reuse plastic. Tires production is a multi-step process. Tires are made from more than 15 main ingredients. Among them, there's synthetic and natural rubber, carbon black pigment, and chemical additives. Giant mixers stir these ingredients under high pressure and temperature. The final result is almost always thin rubber gum. It gets rolled into sheets. After that, tires get assembled on a special machine. Different kinds of cloth, rubber, and metal are used for the production of a tire. Finally, the tire gets cured in a special press under more than 300 degrees of heat and high pressure. This process lasts for 12 to 15 minutes. When they make darts, the flight shafts are produced first. 10-foot-long aluminum rods are put into a special machine. It has a few cutting tools that work from several angles at the same time. The rod turns into shafts. There are threads cut into each flight shaft so that it can be later attached to the dart barrel. That's the part you hold and fling. On the other end, a cross saw makes slots for the arrow flights. At the same time, brass rods turn into the barrels on another machine. Grooves are cut into the barrel surface. This makes them easier to hold. And finally, they produce a dart point. It's done with the help of a hydraulic press. It forces pointed steel into the hollow part of the barrel, and dart's all there is about how they make darts. If you've ever gotten bored while waiting in a car, like I have, you might have played around with a headrest. Yep, you can pull them off, and they'll come right off relatively easily. It seems useless at first, but that's something you'll want to do if you're ever trapped in a car and need to break a window to get out, like I do. Even a box of aluminum foil has its secret. On the side of the box, you can see a small tab you can push in. So simple, but that's what actually holds the roll of foil in place. This tab makes it way easier to unroll a sheet and tear it off without any frustration. Ever wondered why gripping a certain tool, handle, or even a pen kind of feels more secure when it's coated with a rubbery material? The keratin of the outer layer of the human skin is rough and stiff at a small scale. So let's say you have a polished metal or glass which is stiff but also a smooth and impenetrable surface. When you encounter that, the actual contact area is small, as is the friction at the beginning. Your sweat pores secrete moisture, which is why the keratin gets hydrated and becomes softer. Because of that, it requires many seconds for the contact area to increase to the same value it reaches almost right away with some soft materials like rubber. This mechanism might be used by our tactile senses when we want to identify materials. Now, the pom-poms on beanies and other hats have their purpose, and it's not just to look cute and fluffy. Well, at least they did have a purpose. One of the theories says French sailors used to wear hats with pom-poms so they wouldn't hurt their heads on the ship when the weather got rough. Yup, the ceilings of the ship were really low. When the waves were too big, bang, you could easily hit your head on the ceiling. So the pom-poms came in handy. Now they're just a cute addition to our winter caps. That mysterious drawer under the oven, the one where you keep all your kitchen gear you just don't know where else to put? Well, you used it well in that case, but the drawer was originally designed for keeping your meals warm, at least until you're ready to serve them. And that space under your lower cabinets that protrudes slightly and can't be lifted, this area is also called a toe kick. It's the reason why you can stand closer to the counter while cooking. Also, the doors of the cabinets are off the ground, so they'll swing over your toes. The cabinet under the sink isn't for storage either. Maybe that's where you keep your cleaning products, but its real purpose is to give you access if your sinks leak and you need to do some plumbing work. That weird little hole at the top of a lollipop stick you can see after finishing a candy is not a whistle. It has something to do with the manufacturing process. When pouring hot molten caramel into a mold, some of it will seep into this mysterious hole and harden. This way, the candy will stay on the stick and won't fall off. Keyboard letters aren't just randomly arranged the way they are. The first keyboard ever made belonged to the typewriter. Typists eventually got so good at their job, they started typing too quickly. So the key arms would get cross-wired at some point and stuck. That's why manufacturers had to make the order of keys more random to intentionally slow down typists so they could keep the machine running. Do you like to let those brushes on the side of the escalators in malls polish your shoes? Believe it or not, that's not their main gig. The bristles are there for safety. People used to get their bags and clothes stuck in those escalators when they would stand too close to the sides. These nylon bristles kind of play with people's minds, and they keep their feet away from the escalator skirt panels and avoid accidents. Most people assume bobby pins have curves for fashion, which is why they mostly place it in their hair with the wavy side up. But those little waves are actually there to catch the underlying bulk of hair and grip the pin into place. So the wavy side should go down. You've probably noticed measuring tapes mostly come with a metal stub that ends with a small slot. If your hands are full of stuff, simply hang the slot on a nail for measurement. If you take a closer look, you'll see the stub is a little bit serrated on one side. This means you can use it to mark the points, so you don't even need a pencil. If you spend a lot of time in planes, you've probably noticed that little hole located at the bottom of the window. Nothing to be nervous about. It's what keeps us safe while flying high. It's something called a bleed hole. You can see right there in the middle of the pane of the 3 window panes that actually protect passengers from the outside pressure. This hole may be tiny, but it takes all that pressure off the outer one. The hole also gradually exposes it to cabin pressure, which helps with fixing pressure imbalances on the windows, if there are any. There's a number 57 staring at you from the middle of the Heinz ketchup bottle forever. According to the company, only 11% of people are aware the number really has nothing to do with the product label. It's actually a sweet spot where you can tap to get the sauce onto the plate. So, next time you want some ketchup, there's no need to bang the bottom off. Just hit this spot. Grooves on the bottom of cups are there to make cleaning them in the dishwasher more convenient. When you place your cups upside down, these grooves will allow the water to flow rather than stagnate. This way, the water won't spill onto your feet when you take the cups out. The grooves are there to allow cool air to flow beneath the cup too. They also keep cups from cracking when they heat up after you pour hot beverages in. You probably noticed that little dot next to the camera on an iPhone and probably thought it was a flash. Nope, not a flash, but a microphone in charge of catching sounds when you're using the back camera. Next time you're looking for a quick bite and decide for fries at McDonald's, check that bendable flap near the top of the box. Some like to bend it towards the fries. That way you can cover your fries up and keep them warm. But if you're not that patient, you can flip the flap backward and basically turn it into a makeshift plate for your fries. Just bend it down firmly enough. You don't want it to spring back up and spread the sauce all over you. Take it from me, it's messy. In the 1970s, people didn't want toothpaste just to keep their mouths healthy, but also to freshen their breath. Aquafresh decided to answer that call, so they added a blue stripe to their product. Since consumers started paying more attention to their teeth and gums, the company added a third red stripe to their paste. The paste now has 3 functions: freshening, cleaning, and plaque control. And yes, solid white toothpaste can offer the same benefits, but brands continue to add stripes to their paste anyway. Speaking of toothpaste, do you know those colors on the bottom of tubes? The colors don't mean anything in particular. They're there to help in the manufacturing by telling light sensors where the end of the tube is. Thanks to it, the machine can cut and seal the tube properly. Hand sanitizers are commonplace nowadays, and you can apply them in many other ways besides just cleaning your hands. It also works great when you want to remove stains from your clothes. Sanitizer breaks up oily, greasy spillages and does a great job as a degreaser. You can even use it as a deodorant if you get caught out on a hot day. Go check your box of aluminum foil. Does it have push-in tabs on the sides? They're there to keep the roll in place as you pull some foil out. Now flip a stapler upside down. See the metal plate on the bottom? You can turn it to get temporary staples, ones whose pins are bent outward and are easier to take out. Speaking of flipping stuff, do it with a salt jar. Nah, you should have closed the lid first. Now you've got salt all over the place. Okay, now you've done it. Look at the bottom of the jar. See the ribs on it? If you take another jar, say with pepper in it, and rub the bottoms of the 2 jars against each other, the salt will pour out evenly without you having to shake it vigorously. Same works with pepper too. It wasn't their original purpose, but you can use soda can tabs to hang hangers on other hangers. By the way, the hole in the tab is there to put straws through and keep them in place. Post-it notes are supposed to be peeled off from the side like you're turning the page in a book. Most of us tear them from the bottom, and that just creates a crease and makes the whole note less sticky. The hole in your spaghetti spoon helps you measure the perfect portion. It's just enough for one person. Multiply that by however many people you're serving. Or maybe you just like to pig out on pasta. Hey, I'm not judgmental. Does the audio jack in your headphones have 1, 2, or 3 stripes? 1 band means your headphones just play sound. 2 means stereo sound, and 3 mean the headphones also have a microphone. To prevent water from boiling over, just lay a wooden spoon across the rim of the pot. It only works for a little while though. If the spoon's surface gets heated up to boiling point, the bubbles will just foam up and around it. That's why metal spoons won't do. They heat up too quickly. Silica gel packets can absorb up to 50% of the humidity in a confined space, so use them around the house. Tape one to the lid of a container of dry goods, be it dog treats, breadcrumbs, cookies, you name it. Throw one in each of your dresser drawers. Just make sure they don't get accidentally eaten. Most people use bobby pins upside down. The zigzag part goes closer to your scalp. The texture keeps the hair and pin in place much better. Bubble wrap was originally created as wallpaper that would be easy to clean, but the decor idea didn't take off, so they found a new use for it. Now they help cushion items during shipping, and they pop so nicely, of course. Hey, just ask my dog. All crackers and some cookies have holes to make sure the final product has the right texture. These teeny tiny holes allow steam to escape, so your crackers and cookies wouldn't snap. If it weren't for these holes, also known as dockers, steam would build up inside the treat, and the final result might have been scrumptious, but it would have been rather oddly shaped. The scalloped edges on Ritz crackers are there so you can roll the cracker over your cheese so that you get the perfect size piece to sit on top. It works for softish cheese only. Don't try to cut some Parmesan like this. Cheesily speaking, you probably grate your cheese with a cutting board or a plate underneath the box grater. Try a more convenient method. Flip the box grater and lie it on the side. This way you get the finest shreds of cheese and it's mess-free. PVA glue doesn't stick inside the bottle because it contains long molecules, such as polymers and water. Once you squeeze the glue out, the water trapped inside evaporates, leaving only sticky polymers. Superglue doesn't stick inside the bottle because of a special chemical that hardens when it hits water vapor. So the glue doesn't stick because the container keeps water out. The bread goes stale just because it loses moisture. When you add water to the flour, it changes texture, and the starch molecules get pretty disorganized. Hey, I can relate. That's why bread is soft and fluffy when it's freshly made. But the more it cools down, the more water it loses. Starch molecules get their original crystallized state back. Also, recrystallization happens way faster in the fridge. The sole of your sneakers, and even the tires of your car, are just one huge molecule. It's because when rubber is vulcanized, all the molecules become connected through the sulfur, so they turn into one, but a really large molecule. Your jeans are blue on the outside and white on the inside because of a smart way to weave the fabric. The warp thread is dyed, while the weft thread has no color, it's just white. This way, manufacturers reduce the amount of dye needed for each piece of clothing. By the way, most jeans are blue because they were originally dyed with indigo dye with a rich blue tint. This dye was picked for the way it interacted with cotton. When the cotton is heated, most dyes just penetrate it, but indigo dye stays attached to the surface. As a result, each time people wash their jeans, the dye molecules escape the fabric, leaving a unique pattern on each garment. Today, manufacturers use synthetic indigo dye. Bananas have thick skin to keep insects away. However, it gets thinner as the fruit ripens. Once the banana is ripe, it starts getting water from its skin. Birds and animals can also tear the thin skin easily. Hey, smart move, Mother Nature. The public toilets tend to be U-shaped for hygienic reasons. This way, anyone who wants to use it is less likely to get in contact with ceramic, normally swarming with germs. The bottled water has an expiration date. However, the water itself doesn't go bad. The problem is about the bottle. The plastic starts releasing chemicals over time, so the water gets contaminated. You can't drink it anymore. Glass bottled water has an almost indefinite shelf life. Still, some criteria, as changes in room temperature, may lead to a slow increase of bacteria in water, so it might go bad too. If all else fails, try drinking it from the faucet. Who would have thought? Fresh water. In-flight food is way saltier and spicier than back on land. Airlines have to give an extra kick to all the dishes due to in-cabin conditions. The combination of dry air and changed pressure changes how we perceive taste. Also, the taste isn't only about taste buds. It's about 80% smell, but as odor receptors don't work the way they should because of dry cabin air, well, without some extra seasoning, the food would have been almost completely tasteless. And yes, I've been known to be completely tasteless myself. Veins appear blue because they're under our skin, and skin scatters more blue light than red. Also, the skin around the veins looks even redder than the veins, enhancing the contrast, and the veins appear even bluer. However, it's just an illusion. Our blood is always red. Trust me. Supermarket tomatoes look tremendous, but taste bland because, for the past 70 years, farmers have opted for fruits that ripen more evenly and look better and more pleasing to customers. Wild tomatoes are dark green and don't ripen evenly. Still, the tomatoes the farmers grow have a teeny tiny mutation in one gene. That's why they're evenly colored but can't produce chloroplast properly. It changes the whole photosynthesis process, leaving the evenly colored tomatoes with less sugar in their tissues. As a result, these tomatoes tend to taste like cardboard. The moral to the story appears to be, go get some ugly tomatoes, or tomatoes. The space below a cup of noodles is there to protect the noodles during transport. This technique is called a middle suspension. This way, they're protected better in their styrofoam cup, and it also helps those noodles soften more evenly and quickly. Now, chewing gum wasn't invented for keeping your breath fresh. It was supposed to be a replacement for rubber. But the rubber experiment failed, giving opportunity to a modern version of chewing gum. Sandwiches have all their filling in between two slices of bread to keep the hands clean. Well, at least it was so when the first sandwich was invented. Some centuries ago, I wasn't around then, the 4th Earl of Sandwich, John Montagu, asked his chef to cook him something yummy he could eat without interrupting his long binge. The chef, I think he was named Pastrami or something, wrapped meat and all the other ingredients in the bread to make the dish grease-proof. And finally, all the ingredients in margherita pizza stand for one of the colors in the Italian flag. Basil represents the green stripe, mozzarella represents the white one, and tomatoes, or tomatoes, represent the red stripe. And if you want it tastier, use ugly tomatoes.
What's hiding inside Coca-Cola cans and regular household batteries? Why do magnets affect breakfast cereals? Do crosswalk buttons actually work, or are they just useless decorations? What does that USB symbol really mean? I'm not sure I know the answers to these and similar questions, but I'm eager to learn the truth together with you. Let's find it out. Coca-Cola cans have a secret few people know about. Here's a Coke can. Let's submerge it in a highly corrosive alkaline solution. The aluminum dissolves due to a process known as hydrolysis, and we can see a plastic liner inside the can. It's made from a polymer or epoxy resin and serves as some kind of a protective barrier between the aluminum walls of the can and the rather acidic soda. Despite a popular myth, household batteries don't actually contain liquid, and if you accidentally cut them open, no toxic liquid will spill. Most of them are dry cell batteries, which are made of electrochemical cells. Those convert chemical energy into electrical energy. Larger batteries often house numerous small cells within them too. Even Tesla vehicle batteries consist of multiple small cells. When combined, they easily provide the necessary voltage. Most toothbrushes have differently colored bristles, but they aren't just pleasing to the eye. Those bristles, often blue, have a functional purpose. They're called toothbrush indicators, and their colors fade as you use the brush. The American Dental Association recommends changing your toothbrush at least 4 times a year. And by getting paler, these bristles help you figure out when it's time to replace your toothbrush. You'll probably agree that there's no better snack than a pack of chips. Some are flat, others have ridges. Is it just aesthetics? Not really. The main purpose of those lines on some kinds of chips is to help with the distribution of spices and seasonings. In other words, all those substances that make your chips taste like cheese are mostly stored inside the lines. Plus, the lines make chips crunchier. Now this one might be a surprise, but some breakfast cereals are magnetic. That's because they're often fortified with iron in the form of a fine powder. Due to the added iron, cereal flakes get attracted to magnets. All this may sound kinda alarming, but in reality, the iron content in the flakes is minimal and doesn't pose any threat to your health. That clear fluid in gel pens is called the ink follower or stopper fluid. The gel in such pens contains pigment particles dissolved in a polymer solution. The main task of the stopper fluid is to be a barrier to prevent the gel from evaporating or leaking out. Without this transparent fluid, your gel pen wouldn't function. The fluid always stays in one position and doesn't get dissolved with the gel. Neither does it move backwards or flow out of the pen. Many pedestrian crosswalk buttons, namely in New York, are placebo buttons. They do literally nothing when you press them. Originally, they were functional after being introduced in 1964, but today, most of them don't affect traffic lights, which are programmed based on the real needs of the traffic flow. Why do such buttons even exist then? It's a simple psychological trick, providing you with an illusion of control. You might have noticed that movie theater seats are almost always red. This choice isn't random, it has strategic importance, which is rooted in visual science. The thing is, red light has a longer wavelength. It means that it's the first color to disappear in low light. It allows the audience to concentrate better on the screen once the movie begins. Such a design choice enhances the viewing experience by minimizing distractions. Speed bumps are crucial for pedestrian safety, but at the same time, they can seriously increase car emissions due to the non-stop acceleration and deceleration they cause. To address this issue, some cities like London are testing fake speed bumps. Those are optical illusions painted on the road. They look raised from a driver's perspective, but in reality, they're flat. Authorities hope that this approach will slow down drivers without having a negative impact on the environment. Soda bottles are always filled in such a way that there's some space between the liquid and the cap. That's because soda contains carbon dioxide. It's a gas that can expand once the bottle's heated. If there's no gap in the bottle, it can break because of the pressure building inside. Also, when you open your drink, the gases go out in the form of bubbles, making the drink overflow. The gap helps with this problem too. The USB symbol, looking like a trident, has always sparked multiple speculations about its origin. One popular idea is that it represents Neptune's trident and symbolizes power and adaptability. But there's also a little bit less exciting theory. A man who claimed to have designed the symbol in the 1980s stated that it was supposed to represent connectivity. The large circle symbolizes a computer, while the attached shapes, the circle, the triangle, and square, stand for different outputs. The design of a tennis racket has a specific feature known as the throat. It's an open space below the head of the racket. This space isn't just for storing balls, it also improves the racket's aerodynamics by letting air pass through. It seriously reduces drag during swings. Speaking of tennis courts are usually built with a north-south orientation. It helps minimize the impact of the sun's position during the game, ensuring that neither player has the sun directly in their eyes. Look closely at a tram's overhead lines, and you'll see that its contact wires zigzag back and forth instead of going in a straight line. That's because all trams have pantographs attached to their roofs. The upper part of the pantograph is gradually worn down by the overhead wire and eventually needs to be replaced. To wear it down evenly, the wire is not installed strictly along the tram's path, but in zigzag patterns. As the tram moves, the pantograph slides along the wire, and it wears down evenly. Those cone-shaped water cooler cups? Their shape is intentionally designed to prevent users from setting the cups down. This allows employees to minimize the risk of spilling water on their desks around various electronic devices. Plus, less material is used to produce cone-shaped cups, which makes the process less wasteful and more cost-effective. It also kinda supports sustainability by encouraging people to drink their water quickly and dispose of their cups immediately after. Most suitcases have 2 zipper pulls, and it serves several purposes. First of all, if one zipper fails, the other can keep the suitcase closed. Even better, having 2 zippers allows you to have easier access to small sections of your suitcase without having to open it entirely. And finally, when you have 2 zippers, you can connect them with a padlock for increased security. Some plastic milk containers have dents on their sides. These dents serve several purposes. When milk spoils, it usually causes swelling and high-pressure buildup inside the container. That's when the dent pops out and doesn't let the jug blow up. Plus, if you decide to freeze the milk, it will expand like any other fluid. And then again, the indentation will pop out and prevent the container from breaking inside your freezer. If you ever had a problem figuring out why fake pockets exist, you need to hear this. The main reason is that if a clothing item has a specific cut or shape, pockets may spoil it. They can alter the item's shape either in the warehouse or already on the retail rack. The solution? Getting rid of the pockets in key areas. Plus, fake pockets are obviously cheaper, and they don't get stretched out. The thermos wasn't actually invented to keep your coffee warm. It was made by a Scottish scientist who wanted a safe place to keep his chemicals at a stable temperature. So, he took 2 bottles, put the smaller one inside the bigger bottle, and vacuumed out the air between them.
Now, doctors recommend risking your life at least twice a day. I mean, brushing your teeth at least twice a day. But you see, the seemingly harmless toothpaste that peacefully chills on every American counter poses a life-threatening danger because of one not-so-harmless ingredient, sodium fluoride. Now, don't get me wrong, not every toothpaste out there contains it, but most of them still do. But don't rush to the bathroom to trash your tube. If you swallow a tiny pea-sized glob, it isn't fatal. I'm talking about larger quantities. A toothpaste tube has only 0.15% fluoride. To send you running to the hills, you must consume around 8 tubes one by one, so technically, toothpaste is totally safe. Let's go and look for more dangers at your place, shall we? Personally, I don't have this one, but if you happen to have a CFL light bulb, you gotta be extremely cautious with it. The thing is, many of those bulbs are made with mercury. If such a bulb breaks, you gotta start by turning off your ventilation system. Otherwise, the contamination will only get worse. Make sure everyone has left the room, then open a window to allow for fresh air circulation. Finally, clean the area where the bulb shattered. Be careful to address both wet and dry surfaces and contact specialists. Mercury vapors are definitely the biggest concern when it comes to this element. Take, for instance, a case of 2008, where a 55-year-old guy in Oklahoma tried to extract gold from old electronics using liquid mercury. Unfortunately, he inhaled too much vapor and sadly passed away just 10 days later. The contamination was so severe that they had to completely gut his house. Now, you definitely don't want your favorite clothes to get ruined by moths, so you might grab some mothballs to exterminate them. But watch out, those mothballs can exterminate you too. They usually contain chemicals like naphthalene or a paradichlorobenzene. When these get into the air, they turn into gas. That strong smell you associate with mothballs kicks in. Those fumes can actually irritate your eyes and lungs, and may even cause headaches, dizziness, and nausea. Plus, there are concerns about these chemicals being the cause of major conditions that even modern medicine can cure. Naphthalene is especially risky because it can break down your red blood cells, leading to a condition called hemolytic anemia. So try to swap those balls for good old lavender. Moths aren't big fans of it. Now, it's super important to keep an eye on the plants you bring into your home, because some can be surprisingly harmful. Take Dieffenbachia, commonly known as dumb cane, for example. Rumor has it that its sap can cause your tongue to swell up so much that it can block your airway. But can it really? Yes and no. It's true that this plant contains poisonous, tiny needle-like crystals called rapides, but they require someone to actually chew on a leaf first before any fuss happens. Otherwise, you might just feel a brief burning sensation or observe some skin redness. In rare cases, you might see some swelling in the area that touched the plant. Generally, just a little nibble leads to mild discomfort, so please don't snack on your potted plants. This warning is more for the safety of your pets, especially cats. Now, if Dieffenbachia stays in contact with the mouth for too long, it can cause some serious pain that might linger for days or even weeks. In those cases, a trip to the hospital might be necessary, especially if the throat gets affected, as that could impact breathing. But don't believe the hype that Dieffenbachia is a lethal poison. That's just an urban legend. The bottom line? One must be really dumb to get poisoned by a dumb cane. Now, using a power washer can be more dangerous than you might think. The intense pressure can lead to serious injuries, and the high-speed spray can kick up debris that might cause even more harm. If you do get injured, infections can set in quickly, and without timely medical care, things can get really serious. Think severe complications, potential limb loss, or even worse. But honestly, it's not that scary. Just don't overdo it with pressure. Here's a friendly tip. Don't skip out on your weekly house cleaning, especially when it comes to the bathroom. The longer you put off cleaning it, the more risky it becomes. Bathrooms are notorious hotspots for bacteria, which makes regular cleaning essential. You definitely don't want those unwelcome guests like norovirus, E. coli, salmonella, or even Staphylococcus aureus hanging around, along with those molds and mildews. Just put things into perspective. An average toilet seat can host over 200,000 colony-forming bacteria. And here's another thing to keep in mind. If you're not careful while cleaning, you can accidentally create a dangerous situation. Mixing bleach and ammonia can release a toxic gas called chloramine. Those fumes can lead to some pretty nasty symptoms, from shortness of breath to fluid in your lungs. Guess what? If it happens, you will probably kick the bucket. And I'm not talking about the one you use for cleaning the floors in the bathroom. On a sweltering summer day, having air conditioning is definitely a blessing. But don't let that trick you into thinking there aren't risks involved. If your AC is on the older side, it can lead to various issues. For example, the ductwork and filters can trap harmful mold, bacteria, and allergens. If those aren't addressed, folks in your home might end up dealing with coughing, wheezing, or a stuffy nose. Plus, an aging AC unit can pose a fire risk. older components tend to generate more heat as they try to keep up, and if they're not replaced, you could end up with a potential fire hazard. Faulty wiring is another concern, as many wires are tucked away in hard-to-reach spots, making them tough to inspect. So, if you have an older AC, it's a smart move to have it cleaned properly and ensure that its parts and wiring are up to date to avoid any fire risks. Snuggling under a cozy electric blanket when the weather turns chilly sounds like a dream. But if electric blankets get too hot, they might lead to burns. This risk is particularly significant with older models that don't have an automatic shutoff feature. So the best way to use such a blanket is to warm up your bed and then turn it off before you crawl in. There's also the concern of heat stroke, linked to the use of an electric blanket. Once, 2 people were discovered unresponsive in their beds beneath electric blankets. The first person's body temperature reached an alarming 106.2 degrees Fahrenheit, while the second person's temperature was 105.8 degrees Fahrenheit. So while these blankets offer comfort, it's crucial to use them wisely. Just a quick heads up about windshield washer fluid. It contains methanol, which can really pack a punch. If ingested, it can cause everything from dizziness and headaches to severe poisoning. Make sure to store it safely and keep it in the original container. Never transfer it to unmarked bottles. It can easily be confused with water and other harmless liquids, and that's a big no-no. Methanol is super toxic. For a grown-up, 2 to 8 ounces can do the trick. You know what I mean. The windshield washer fluid you dump into your car usually has about 30 to 50% methanol in it. But the concentrated versions? They can pack a serious punch with 90 to 100% methanol. Just remember, these products need to be diluted with water before you use them. The last everyday thing on our list does seem to be a great buddy of ours, especially if located in the bathroom. But although air fresheners can give your home a pleasant scent, many of them release volatile organic compounds that can build up over time and may pose serious health risks, including neurological issues and incurable conditions. I suggest, if you were to ask me, you play it safe and think about opting for natural alternatives or enhancing your home's ventilation instead. Got that? Good.
Some men wear shoes with hidden heel lifts to look taller. Such shoes can make a person up to 6 inches taller. They look like regular shoes, but inside they have this extra insert. Sometimes, such an insert is glued down. Sometimes it's removable, and you can choose the height you need yourself. When the Titanic hit the iceberg and sank sometime later, the Atlantic Ocean was around 28 degrees Fahrenheit, which means the water was below its freezing point. No wonder so many passengers didn't make it. Some birds have a row of bristles protruding from the edges of their eyelids. Those bristles can probably be called eyelashes, but while human eyelashes are modified hairs meant to protect the eye, bird eyelashes are modified feathers. Identical twins don't actually have the same fingerprints, so you can't blame your misdeeds on your sibling after all. Different factors during development in the womb, like the position of the womb, umbilical cord length, and the rate of finger growth, impact fingerprints. Earth's rotation speed is changing. It's slowing down right now while we're talking. It means that, on average, the length of the day gets 1.8 seconds longer every century. 600 million years ago, a day lasted a mere 21 hours. Most world maps are wrong. On the majority of maps, they still use the Mercator projection, which was the first developed in 1569. But this method is very inaccurate and makes Alaska look as large as Brazil, while in reality, it's 5 times smaller. As for Greenland, it looks 14 times larger than it actually is. For a map to be precise, it would need to be life-sized and round, not flat. Ants don't have lungs. They breathe through tiny openings known as spiracles. An ant may have 9 or 10 of those on each side of the body, depending on the species. The average color of the universe is poetically called cosmic latte. In a 2002 study, scientists discovered that the light coming from other galaxies averaged into a beige color that was very close to white, just like the drink beloved by many. There is such a thing as minus decibels. The quietest place on Earth is Microsoft's anechoic chamber in Redmond, USA. The level of sound there is minus 20.6 decibels. Such chambers are built out of heavy concrete and bricks and are placed on springs to stop vibrations from entering the chamber through the floor. Bananas are radioactive. Wait, where did you go? It's not that bad. Bananas are rich in potassium, so each banana is slightly radioactive due to the natural isotope potassium-40. On the other hand, your body contains around 16 milligrams of potassium-40, so you're actually about 280 times more radioactive than that poor banana. And in any case, your body gets rid of that excess potassium-40 from a banana within several hours. There's simply no such thing as a straight line. You just need to zoom in close enough and you're bound to spot some irregularities. Even a laser light beam is a bit curved. In emergencies, fish form orderly lines. For example, when evacuating through narrow spaces in dangerous situations, school of neon tetrafish queue so that they don't crash into one another or clog up the line. Scientists think that this behavior means that fish can respect social rules even in emergency situations, unlike us humans. Hippos can't swim. These animals have large bones. These bones are so big and dense that it makes hippos barely buoyant at all. So these animals don't swim. Instead, they perform something like a slow-motion gallop on the riverbed. Hippos can also sleep underwater thanks to a reflex that allows them to rise to the surface, take a breath, and sink back down to the bottom without waking up. Lego bricks can withstand compression better than concrete. A regular plastic Lego brick can support the weight of 375,000 other bricks before it breaks. Theoretically, it could allow you to build a tower more than 2 miles in height. But if we decide to scale this up to house-sized bricks, the price would be exorbitant. If you ever go to space, you can take your yo-yo with you. In 2012, NASA astronaut Don Petit took a yo-yo on board the International Space Station and used it to show some tricks. You see, a yo-yo mostly relies on the laws of conservation of angular momentum to perform tricks. And if you keep the string taut, these laws apply in microgravity too. There's a theory that claims that we sweat when we're anxious to alert the brains of other people that they're primed for that danger that's making us feel anxiety. Brain scans have revealed that when you sniff the sweat produced by a panicking person, regions of the brain responsible for emotional and social signals light up. And when you are anxious, your sympathetic nervous system produces hormones, including adrenaline, which switches on your sweat glands. There are rainbows on Venus, and they're called glories. A glory looks like a series of colored concentric rings and is caused by the interference of light waves inside droplets rather than the process of reflection, refraction, and dispersion of light, which produces rainbows. Protons look like bagels, spheres, peanuts, and rugby balls. In other words, protons come in different shapes and sizes. Their appearance changes based on the speed of quarks, smaller particles within them. If you look at the moon while being in the southern hemisphere, it will seem to be upside down, and the man on the moon will look more like a rabbit. You will remember more of your dreams if you sleep badly and wake up many times throughout the night. You're also more likely to remember your dream if someone or something wakes you up in the middle of it. Dogs tilt their heads while listening to people to pinpoint familiar words like walkies more effectively. It also helps them to understand the tone of your voice better. There's also an idea that if a dog doesn't tilt its head often, it's because it relies more on sight and less on sound. Mirrors facing each other won't produce infinite reflections. Each next reflection will be darker than the previous one, and eventually, they will fade into invisibility. Mirrors absorb just a fraction of the energy of the light falling on them, so the total number of reflections mirrors can produce is around several hundred. You can smell ants, since many species of these insects produce strong-smelling chemicals when they feel threatened or angry, or when they're being squished. Trapjaw ants release a chocolatey smell when they're crushed, And citronella ants give off a lemony odor when they're threatened. Giraffes hum when they want to communicate with each other. Researchers think that this low-frequency humming might be a form of contact call between individuals that have been separated from their herd. It can also help giraffes find each other in the dark. But the coolest thing about these magnificent animals? Some scientists think that they could sleep talk too. And a cool bonus story for you. About a marathon runner who took over 50 years to finish the race. Japanese marathoner runner Shizo Kanekuri was selected as one of the 2 athletes that Japan could send to the 1912 Stockholm Olympics. But Kanekuri shockingly disappeared during the marathon race. It turned out that after a rough 18-day-long trip to Stockholm, first by ship and then by train, the man was exhausted. During the race, he stopped running because his condition simply didn't allow him to run further. The athlete stumbled into a nearby garden party where he drank orange juice and stayed for a while to recover. Later, Kanekuri was so embarrassed by his failure that he returned to Japan without notifying anyone, including race officials. So, Swedish authorities considered him missing for 50 years before finding out that he was peacefully living in his home country. In 1967, the athlete was offered the opportunity to finish his run. He accepted. 54 years, 8 months, 6 days, 5 hours, 32 minutes, and 20.3 seconds after he started the race, he completed the marathon. It was a long trip. Along the way, the man got married, had 6 kids, and 10 grandchildren.
So listen, if you don't want your next barbecue party to end up at the emergency room, you might want to get rid of that wire brush you used to clean the grill. Over 100 people have to seek medical help because of it every year. Those brass and steel bristles easily separate from the brush and stick to cooked food that ends up in your mouth. With each swallow, they go deeper and deeper. They can poke into or puncture the lining of your mouth, throat, and esophagus, or somewhere else down your intestinal tract. The symptoms this causes could be signs of many different conditions, and because of their tiny size, the bristles are really tricky for doctors to spot. So you can lose the precious time to solve the problem at an early stage. In some cases, one ER visit can solve the problem. But if the bristle moves into deeper tissues, say into your neck, chest, or abdomen, well, it could start an infection, and you'd need some complex surgery to save your life. That was the case for a 63-year-old lady in Michigan. She was eating a hot dog grilled by her husband, and she felt something was wrong from the first bite. She could barely swallow the food because of an unusually painful sore throat and had to see the doctors for help. They sent her home after an inspection, but the symptoms only got worse and worse. A CT scan several months later showed the problem was some tiny metallic object that looked like a piece of hair at the back of her throat. The doctors were able to remove it during surgery. So, to play it safe, take good care of your wire grill brush and inspect it before putting food on it. If you see any loose or dangling wire bristles, get rid of them. If this sounds like too much work, just toss that brush altogether. There are some safe alternatives to it, like wooden panels, pumice stone, nylon bristle brush, or liquid grill cleaner. You can also roll a piece of aluminum foil into a ball and use grill tongs to hold it while you're scrubbing your dirty grill grates. Cooking pros say an onion cut in half can also do the job. The caterpillar that arrived at your barbecue party as an uninvited guest might seem cute and harmless, but not all of them are safe to pick up and play with. There are several types of venomous caterpillars in the US alone that can give you a hard time. Any brightly colored caterpillar that has a spine, bristles, or looks fuzzy could be venomous, and you're better off not touching it. Many caterpillars are equipped with hairs or spines, which are connected to poisonous glands. They often hide on the underside of the leaf, so you could easily miss it. So, when you're doing some work in the garden, it's a good idea to wear gloves and clothes with long sleeves. Your skin will thank you for it. If you get stung by accident, use any sticky tape to remove the hair or spines, and then just wash the affected spot with soap and water. If you plan to go swimming or boating to cool down after the party, Remember that algal blooms aren't just a freaky splash of color in the water, but a real problem. They're toxic and can cause a lot of trouble for you and your pets. The symptoms will be less than pleasant, and will involve you spending a great deal of time in the bathroom. Algae bloom means there are plenty of bacteria in the water, so don't swim in it and don't drink the water, no matter how thirsty you are after all the swimming. And if you happen to get some ingested water on your skin, take a long shower with clean water immediately. The media should report cases of dangerous algae blooms in your area, so make sure to check it before you hit the nearest lake. Wild parsnip might not appear in your summer nightmares, but this yellow-flowered plant can do some really mean things to your body. It contains a substance called solerin, and when you accidentally touch it and then enjoy a walk in the sun, the effect it will leave on your skin will be as nasty as the name Sorolin. And you could have dark red or brownish discoloration on your skin for months after your unwanted rendezvous with the plant. It's mostly active and mischievous between May and July, so watch out. Alright, a garden hose must be completely safe as, unlike the grill brush, it doesn't have any small metallic parts, right? Well, when you leave it hanging out in direct sunlight, the water inside can heat up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. If you spray someone with water this hot, their skin won't love it. It's especially dangerous for youngsters and pets. So, if you see someone blissfully unaware, grab the hose, take it from them by force if needed, and let the water run for a few moments before you let anyone play with the hose. It's for their own good. The intense sun can also heat up all the bad chemicals the hose itself contains, like lead and phthalates. So, check what yours is made of and replace it with a safer version that's labeled lead-free or drinking water safe if you plan to use the water for drinking or playing. And if you already have a safe version, but suddenly smell a terrible odor, it could be the algae and bacteria that just love stagnant water. If it comes into contact with your skin, or you swallow it by accident, you could have some serious health problems. The best you can do is replace the hose. And yes, make sure you keep it in a cool, shaded area and drain it well after every use. Now, you're never too old to love the trampolines, but the trampoline might not love you back and give you a spinal injury or broken bones. Almost 100,000 injuries like this with young users happen every year because they're so easy to fall from or land in the worst possible way during a somersault or a flip. The biggest risk of trampoline trouble is when more than one person is using this fun contraption. Nearly 75% of all accidents with trampolines happen when two jumping youngsters crash into one another. And no, some netting or padding really can't save the day. If you want to keep things safe, make sure there's always only one person at a time on the trampoline. You're going to need to install shock-absorbing pads that completely cover the trampoline's metal frame, springs, and hooks. If you see any signs of the padding getting too old, like tears and fraying, you need to replace it immediately. Make sure the trampoline stands on level ground and isn't too close to other structures and trees. A slide in your backyard, no matter if it's made of metal or plastic, can turn into a frying pan under the sun and can heat up to 189 degrees Fahrenheit. So, before you jump on it or let someone else do it, check the temperature of the whole thing top to bottom. And even when your little sister or someone else you love is begging you to go on a ride with them, don't do it. The slide is designed for one person of a certain size. When the two of you end up tandem sliding, the smaller leg can get caught up between the bigger leg and the edge of the slide. The speed will also increase, and it can lead to all sorts of drama. Finally, no matter how tempting it feels in the hot months, don't walk barefoot on that beautiful lawn in the park or even in your own garden. You never know what's hiding in the grass, and if you step on something sharp, like a rusty nail hiding in the grass, you'll get yourself into a lot of trouble. Flip-flops aren't the best idea for everyday summer shoes either. They rarely come with arch support and can make you take shorter steps and put more stress on your body. It's just not good for your feet, joints, and muscles. Otherwise, have a great summer! You know how they say, when in Rome, do as the Romans do? Meaning, in Rome, you need to make sure your goldfish has a deluxe bowl to live in. In Nigeria, don't you dare to bring your own wheelbarrow. And perish the thought of adding as much mayo as you want to your dish when you're in France. Yep, bans around the world may be surprising, to say the least. Number 1. You will never see a good old doorknob in Vancouver, Canada. Some time ago, the city changed its building code to require the use of cool and sleek door levers instead. This change is all about making buildings more accessible and easier to use. Not only new buildings are getting a new makeover, even Vancouver's historic City Hall had its fancy Art Deco doorknobs replaced with shiny gold levers. But it's not that you can't legally have it in your house. There isn't a team of doorknob police coming to your house to confiscate your knobs. You can keep them as long as you like. Number 2 comes with a GeoGuessr tip for y'all. If you see this chair in the picture, it means it's 100% not in Basel, Switzerland. It's called a monoblock chair, and it's special. You see, most objects give away clues about when and where they're from, like the shape of electrical outlets or the labels on your shampoo bottle. But the monoblock is context-free. Some people call them one of the world's most perfectly designed objects, while others say the homogeneous nature of the chair is disturbing and the real evil of globalization. But why is it banned in Basel? Turns out the authorities just want the city to be pretty, and the chair design isn't to their liking. Right, if you want to keep one in your backyard, feel free. But they've been a big no in public spaces since 2008. 3. If you were ever thinking of bringing a wheelbarrow to Nigeria, I've got some news for you. Don't even try. Should you need it for some reason during your stay in Nigeria, just buy one there when you arrive. The authorities won't let you bring your imported wheelbarrow across the border. Why? Well, they're all about supporting their own manufacturing industry, so they want to give their local wheelbarrow makers a chance to shine. At number 4, we've got China, where the authorities decided to put a stop to time travel. Wait a minute, it's not what you think. No time travel machine has been invented. The ban is on TV shows and movies. By the way, it's not something new. The law was introduced in the early 2010s. Apparently, the big shots in charge want to keep things real and are not too keen on distorting historical events. They say some scripts are getting a bit too wild, making up myths, promoting superstition, and disrespecting the country's past. 5. Coffee pods. They've become super popular because they make brewing coffee so easy. But Hamburg, Germany doesn't seem to be a fan of those pods. Around 8 years ago, they took a stand by banning plastic coffee pods from authorities' offices. These little pods are made of various materials, making recycling a real challenge. While it's true that these coffee capsules can create a lot of problems, they're still loved by many. In fact, they've become a big hit in the US and Europe, making up a chunk of the coffee market. Hamburg is hoping to lead the way in showing people just how wasteful these pods really are. Number 6. Chewing gum. It has been banned in Singapore since 1992. The ban was put in place to stop people from sticking gum in all sorts of weird places, like subway doors, lock cylinders, and elevator buttons. Yuck. But costly train shenanigans were the last straw for the authorities. The ban was put in place after some serious gum incidents on the Mass Rapid Transit or MRT trains in the late 80s. Some mischievous pranksters have been gumming up the works on MRT trains by sticking chewing gum on the door sensors. That caused a sticky situation and messed up train services. And there you have it, chewing gum got completely banned. Now, just a note here, yep, these are gums prescribed for therapeutic or dental reasons. And yep, they're still allowed. Also, don't get this whole ban wrong. It's not illegal to chew gum in Singapore. So if you come there as a tourist, you can bring in a little gum for personal use if you're traveling. Just do not stick it under this nice park bench, okay? What will create you a ton of troubles, though, is importing and selling chewing gum. Iceland is number 7 in our ban hit parade. Back in 1994, Reykjavik was like, no dogs allowed. It wasn't because they were all about cats, it was to stop this nasty tapeworm from spreading. The disease was serious business, causing all sorts of health problems. But don't worry, Dogs are cool now as long as they follow the rules. Nowadays in Reykjavik, it's all about the cats. They're everywhere, roaming the streets like they, own the place. You can't walk 2 steps without seeing a furry little friend begging for attention. These Reykjavik kitties are so popular that they even have their own Facebook page. People love them, and some even carry around treats just in case they come across a friendly feline. And since there aren't many threats to cats in Iceland, they're thriving. 8. The Philippines. Now this one is really weird. Singing My Way in karaoke bars is sort of banned in this country. This seemingly harmless song has been linked to some pretty serious consequences, like fistfights and even people's early demise. No one knows the exact number of lethal cases caused by this song, but there have been at least a handful of incidents in the last 10 years. The song's lyrics, which can come off as a bit arrogant and prideful, seem to rile people up when sung in a not-so-great way. This has led some karaoke bars to unofficially ban the song to prevent any craziness from breaking out. 9. Hey, have you heard about Japan's Metabo law? It's all about measuring waist sizes to tackle obesity. It was introduced in 2008, and the idea was that if companies and local authorities didn't meet the goals, they would face financial penalties. The Ministry of Health believed this campaign would help prevent various health conditions. So, every year, people aged 40 to 75 had to get their waist measured. Employers and local authorities needed to make sure at least 65% of people participated. The goal was to reduce Japan's obesity rates by 25% by 2015, and if they hadn't made it, they would have gotten slapped with a fine. Did it work? Well, in 2024, there are only 4.5% of people who reportedly have weight issues in Japan. Number 10, and we're back to Canada. So if you catch someone in there counting out pennies in line, you can totally have some fun with them, legally speaking, of course. According to the Canadian Currency Act, there's a limit to the number of pennies you can use in a transaction, 25 to be exact. So, if someone tries using 26 coins, you can play sheriff and send them to coin jail. Snatch up their pennies as evidence. Yeah. 11. And a condiment-regulated country here. Apparently, in France, they're cracking down on condiments in public schools. They're trying to make meals healthier for students. The rule is that you can't just go crazy with mayo, ketchup, and vinaigrette anymore. They have to be served according to the dish. Finally, Italy. In Rome, you can't keep your goldfish in a boring old glass bowl. Nope, that's considered cruel, because those little guys need their oxygen flow. Plus, if you keep them in a bowl for too long, they might go blind. Also, you can't give away goldfish as prizes. The law has a whole subsection about it. So if you're planning on bringing a goldfish home from your next trip to Rome, make sure you've got a fancy tank ready for them. And thank you for watching.
Trains used to make people mad. During the Victorian era, there was this rumor that the swaying motion of train carriages made passengers, especially men, go a bit crazy, leading to some strange and dangerous behavior. The so-called railway madness was supposedly triggered by the noise of the train. To make things worse, carriages were locked for privacy reasons back then, so people found themselves stuck in tiny spaces with lunatics who could snap at any moment. If you see someone putting ketchup on some car, it doesn't mean you're witnessing them preparing a prank. It means they're just taking care of their car. Yup, it goes great with hamburgers and hot dogs, but it goes even better with cars, since it has ingredients that are good at removing rust. Rust occurs when the metal gets exposed to moisture, oxygen, and heat, and due to weather conditions, it's hard to avoid it. When you leave rust for a longer time and don't deal with it, it will continue to degrade the metal. So, you need to get rid of it before your car becomes physically useless. That's when ketchup comes in. Its key ingredient is tomatoes, and they have many nutrients similar to those you can find in oranges and some other citrus fruits. For instance, citric acid can help you remove rust from metal surfaces since it eats through rust. We're not talking about the cars only. You can use it on metallic kitchenwares, furniture parts, jewelry, and rust spots on generally any metallic item. You can combine it with washing soda. It's not quite effective against rust, but when you combine it with ketchup, it'll do the work. Mix these two and apply them to the rusted area. Leave it like that for about half an hour and wash it with a wet cloth or sponge. You can combine ketchup with salt instead, or just apply a lot of it on the rusty area without using any additional ingredients. Ketchup removes tarnish from brass copper too. Put it on brass hardware on doors and cabinets, or some accessories such as bowls and candlesticks for 10 minutes to make it all shine. And also, you don't put it on meat just because of taste. Ketchup breaks down its fibers, which means it makes it more tender. Locking handles as we know them were only invented relatively recently, in 1878. Before that, people had to get pretty inventive to secure their homes. Most folks used a latch string. They'd make a small hole in the door, thread a leather thong or string through it, and then loop it around a wooden bar. Even after doorknobs were invented, only the wealthy could afford a proper lock and key. Vacuum cleaners had a rough start too. The first one was invented in 1901, but it was so huge that it wouldn't fit inside houses. Instead, vacuuming was offered as a mobile service. The machines were parked outside, and long hoses were fed through the windows. And to get to the client's house, these large cleaning machines were actually pulled by horses. Back in the day, animals even used to pull strollers. Yep, with kids inside. The stroller was first developed in 1733 for the daughters and sons of a British nobleman who might have been a bit too lazy to walk with them every day. So, the first model was basically a shell-shaped basket on wheels that could be pulled by a goat or a small pony. This small chariot was cute, but probably not the safest way to get around. Refrigerators also used to be a bit scary. From the late 1800s until 1929, they used toxic gases like ammonia, methyl chloride, and sulfur dioxide to cool things down. People were so concerned about gas leaks that they began leaving their refrigerators in the backyard instead of keeping them in the kitchen. This danger even inspired Albert Einstein to create a new model. In 1926, Einstein and his former student Leo Szilard invented a refrigerator with no moving parts, using safer, environmentally friendly gases to reduce the risk of toxic leaks. But it had one problem. Einstein's refrigerator was less efficient than existing appliances, so it wasn't commercially appealing. If you ever find yourself casually wandering in the forests of Estonia, don't freak out if you see some giant megaphones. These wooden, acoustic giants were set 3 hours away from the country's capital by interior architecture students. That's way cooler than the hamster roller coaster I once built for a science fair, I have to admit. More than half of Estonia is covered by woods, and they're pretty proud of this natural wealth. So it's not the first art project of this kind, and there was a winding, elevated pathway and a faceted woodland cabin. The idea of the megaphones is to crank up the natural sounds of a forest and also to serve as a rest spot for hikers. These wooden beauties are large enough to host several people. And hey, if you walk this far into the woodland, you'll be thankful for this. The students were given a task to invent some concepts of a forest library. They built the megaphones off-site and brought them to their permanent spots. They're set in such a way that sounds from 3 directions meet in the center and create a cool, natural surround sound effect. Thankfully, kitchen supplies, including our beloved grills, have come a long way. Back in the 1950s, a metalworker named George Stephen had a brilliant idea while trying to create the perfect steak. Frustrated with flare-ups and uneven cooking, he decided to cut an old ocean buoy in half. This allowed him to control the airflow better. And that's how the Weber Kettle Grill was born, changing backyard barbecues forever. Have you ever used a public bathroom in the summer in your shorts and sandals and got splashed? It happens to the best of us, so no worries. If only there was some solution to this problem. Perhaps a urinal with a small hole so no liquid goes where it shouldn't. Looks pretty yucky and painful to me. An assistant professor at the University of Waterloo, Zhao Pen and his colleagues came up with a way better solution for this sensitive issue. Their designs were inspired by physics and dogs. When a stream of liquid moves on a solid surface at a shallow angle, the splash is reduced, and the smaller the angle, the fewer splashes you'll see. You can even minimize them to a zero. And when dogs do their business, they lift their hind legs and do it on the vertical surface of a tree or a wall. I don't know if they actually care about it, but this does reduce the splash. Good job, Pluto. Talking about that, here's a fun challenge for your next family gathering. Ask everyone to fold a piece of paper in half, then in half again, and keep going for a total of 7 folds. Spoiler alert, they probably won't succeed. That's because each fold makes the paper thicker and thicker. In fact, if you had a huge sheet of paper and folded it in half 50 times, it would end up being about 62 million miles thick, which is about 2/3 of the way from Earth to the Sun. So yeah, it's impossible. The current record is held by a high school student named Brittany Gallivan, who managed to fold a single piece of paper in half 12 times, and it was a tissue paper. The USB symbol, looking like a trident, has always sparked multiple speculations about its origin. One popular idea is that it represents Neptune's trident and symbolizes power and adaptability. But there's also a little bit less exciting theory. A man who claimed to have designed the symbol in the 1980s stated that it was supposed to represent connectivity. The large circle symbolizes a computer, while the attached shapes, the circle, the triangle, and square, stand for different outputs. Look closely at a tram's overhead lines, and you'll see that its contact wires zigzag back and forth instead of going in a straight line. That's because all trams have pantographs attached to their roofs. The upper part of the pantograph is gradually worn down by the overhead wire and eventually needs to be replaced. To wear it down evenly, the wire is not installed strictly along the tram's path, but in zigzag patterns. As the tram moves, the pantograph slides along the wire, and it wears down evenly. Those cone-shaped water cooler cups? Their shape is intentionally designed to prevent users from setting the cups down. This allows employees to minimize the risk of spilling water on their desks around various electronic devices. Plus, less material is used to produce cone-shaped cups, which makes the process less wasteful and more cost-effective. It also kinda supports sustainability by encouraging people to drink their water quickly and dispose of their cups immediately after. You're probably wearing a YKK product right now. I mean, go check the zipper on your jeans. Yep, that's it. YKK stands for Yoshida Kogyo Kabushiki Kaisha, a Japanese company that makes roughly half of all the zippers in the world, producing over 7 billion zippers each year. Originally called hookless fasteners, they became known as zippers after a pair of rubber boots that could be fastened with a single zip became popular in 1923. The name stuck because of the high-pitched zip sound they make when used. Despite a popular myth, household batteries don't actually contain liquid, and if you accidentally cut them open, no toxic liquid will spill. Most of them are dry cell batteries, which are made of electrochemical cells. Those convert chemical energy into electrical energy. Larger batteries often house numerous small cells within them too. Even Tesla vehicle batteries consist of multiple small cells. When combined, they easily provide the necessary voltage. Did you know that nail polish used to be a status symbol? In ancient Egypt, queens like Nefertiti and Cleopatra were famous for their red nails, while lower-ranking citizens were only allowed to wear pale shades. You'll probably agree that there's no better snack than a pack of chips. Some are flat, others have ridges. Is it just aesthetics? Not really. The main purpose of those lines on some kinds of chips is to help with the distribution of spices and seasonings. In other words, all those substances that make your chips taste like cheese are mostly stored inside the lines. Plus, the lines make chips crunchier. This item here was also popular in ancient Egypt. What looks like a weird bench was actually a weird type of pillow. Back then, headrests were made from materials like wood, ceramic, and stone. Unlike our comfy pillows today, those ancient ones were used to protect people's hairstyles. That way, their hairdos stayed neat, even though they had a very uncomfortable night. If you've left a pot on the stove and your food burned, once again, take ketchup. Its acids will ease all the scrubbing and help you with grease. Just leave it over the night and you'll be able to wash the pot more easily. Or keep those small packages of ketchup we all end up having from fast food orders in the freezer. The ketchup won't be as hard as an ice cube as it freezes. So it will be good for soothing insect bites or similar things. For 8 centuries, forks were considered cursed and nearly forbidden in the West. The first models were used by the elite in the Middle East and the Byzantine Empire, and they made their way to the West in 1004, thanks to a noblewoman named Maria Agrippina. People were pretty shocked by it, to say the least. So when she passed away just 2 years later, everyone blamed the fork, thinking it was some kind of divine punishment. By the way, its name comes from the Latin word furca, which means pitchfork. Next on our list is Nike's iconic moon shoe, but I'm talking about the unique pattern of its sole. Back in the 1970s, Nike co-founder Bill Bowerman was making waffles for breakfast with his wife when he had a sudden idea: to pour a plastic material called polyurethane into the waffle iron. The machine was ruined, of course, but I guess it was worth it since that's how the first Nike waffle trainer was born. I mean, its sole. That clear fluid in gel pens is called the ink follower or stopper fluid. The gel in such pens contains pigment particles dissolved in a polymer solution. The main task of the stopper fluid is to be a barrier to prevent the gel from evaporating or leaking out. Without this transparent fluid, your gel pen wouldn't function. The fluid always stays in one position and doesn't get dissolved with the gel. Neither does it move backwards or flow out of the pen. Let's move on to another favorite snack: popcorn. These days, cinema and popcorn go hand in hand, but it wasn't always this way. In the 1920s and 1930s, movie theater owners were hesitant to allow snacks in their theaters. They were worried about the mess and the crunching noises interfering with movies. Plus, popcorn used to cost only 5 to 10 cents, so they didn't see any financial benefit. But savvy street vendors saw a big chance. So they got their own popcorn machines and started selling them outside theaters. That's why popcorn probably became the original clandestine movie snack, and theater staff would even have to check if people were hiding bags of it in their coats. Have you ever helped your friends move into a new apartment in a building without an elevator? Then you're gonna love this one. Houses in Amsterdam have hooks on top. This is a medieval invention for pulling stuff up the houses. The simple tech consisting of a wheel and a rope still functions now, centuries later. Why not just use the stairs? Well, if you get inside one of those narrow Amsterdam buildings, you'll see there's hardly enough room to comfortably ascend, and you can forget about even trying to pull a table on top. Back in the medieval ages, pretty much like now, only rich people could afford housing around the canals in the best parts of the city. Those people were mostly traders and used the canals for their business. They stored goods in the same houses they lived in, and with regular floods, they had to find a way to keep the goods dry. And that's why they needed to invent something to lift furniture, goods, boxes, instruments, and food on the upper floors, and pull it in through fully open, wide windows. The lifting tech is one of the reasons the houses in Amsterdam are leaning forward. This position helped keep both the lifted stuff and the walls and windows safe during transportation. They didn't have to touch each other. The gables also assisted in the process and had to be made firm to withstand all the heavy weight. And in case you're wondering what gables are, they're sections of wall between the edges of a dual-pitched roof, typical for Amsterdam. Sticking with old-school fun, it's time to talk about cards. So, have you ever wondered how many times you need to riffle a deck to shuffle it completely? The answer is 7 times, according to math. Even cooler, if you shuffle a deck right, you're probably creating a unique order that's never existed before and never will again. And if you have a deck at hand, check out the 4 kings. You'll notice that the King of Hearts is the only one without a mustache. He's not special or anything. I mean, he also used to have a mustache, but it was lost in the reproduction of the original design. Your home has more regular things that can do magic tricks. Like if you have a house or a big terrace and want to make a nice flower wall. Try old mattress springs. Just hang them on the wall and let your imagination run wild with flowers. An old flower sifter can still come in handy, for example, as a planter. Even if you don't have one, you might find it at a garage sale or a thrift store. Wallpaper is making its big comeback when it comes to home design. Maybe you can try something different and use some old books with torn pages. You just need to learn the basics of hanging wallpaper, and voila! You get a new cool place for your old books. There's a solution for the remains of an old book. Don't worry. You can have blocks where you'll keep your kitchen knives. It's pretty original, don't you think? Solitaire was probably everyone's go-to game to pass the time back in the 1990s, but its original purpose was far from it. When developers created this game, their idea was to teach people how to use a computer without them even realizing it. For example, dragging and dropping cards into one place helped people learn how to move files into folders. The same goes for Minesweeper, which was designed to help people get used to using a mouse and clicking. Cleaning blinds can be frustrating, but the next time you do it, try doing it with a sock over your hand. Hands are kind of perfectly shaped for getting all those nooks and crannies on the blinds, and the sock will do the rest. Here's something you wouldn't expect. Ice cubes can help you remove gum from carpet, clothing, and hair. Just put your clothes in the sink and add ice cubes. Leave it like that for a while. Ice will freeze the gum, so you can chip it away more easily. If the gum got stuck on the carpet, leave ice cubes right in the critical spot and remove the gum with a butter knife. It's a little bit harder to remove it from hair though, but still possible. Just wrap the ice and parts of your hair with the gum in a washcloth until the gum gets frozen. When you get there, you should be able to break apart the gum and free your hair using your fingers. Or next time you have to deal with a splinter, just take one ice cube to numb that area before you even start doing anything. You might have noticed that movie theater seats are almost always red. This choice isn't random. It has strategic importance, which is rooted in visual science. The thing is, red light has a longer wavelength. It means that it's the first color to disappear in low light. It allows the audience to concentrate better on the screen once the movie begins. Such a design choice enhances the viewing experience by minimizing distractions. Speed bumps are crucial for pedestrian safety, but at the same time, they can seriously increase car emissions due to the non-stop acceleration and deceleration they cause. To address this issue, some cities like London are testing fake speed bumps. Those are optical illusions painted on the road. They look raised from a driver's perspective, but in reality, they're flat. Authorities hope that this approach will slow down drivers without having a negative impact on the environment. Soda bottles are always filled in such a way that there's some space between the liquid and the cap. That's because soda contains carbon dioxide. It's a gas that can expand once the bottle's heated. If there's no gap in the bottle, it can break because of the pressure building inside. Also, when you open your drink, the gases go out in the form of bubbles, making the drink overflow. The gap helps with this problem too. If you're more into Angry Birds, Candy Crush, and other mobile games, that's totally normal. After all, more people have access to cell phones than to toilets these days. But not many of us stop to think about how disgusting our phones can be. The natural bacteria from our skin and the oils from our hands get transferred to our phones with every touch, swipe, and tap. This makes phones about 10 times dirtier than toilet seats. Yikes! If you're planning a trip across the Atlantic, you should prepare for more than just the jet lag. Depending on where you land, life in Europe can seem a bit unusual. So it's best to do a bit of research before you travel. Speaking of quirky little differences, one of the first things you may notice is the lack of AC. Hope you like fresh air because central air conditioning isn't everywhere like you might be used to. In Europe, you might find that someone's flat, office, or even a full restaurant doesn't have an AC unit. That's because some Europeans rely solely on their windows to get a breeze.
However, bigger places like grocery stores and malls usually keep things well ventilated. Water in European restaurants is not always free either, even though this is common practice in the US. Sure, you'll get a fancy glass bottle at most places, but you'll also see it on your bill. More so, if you ask for water, be sure to specify if you'd like it still, because you might get sparkling water instead. Forget about getting a glass full of ice water too. You might get cold water from the fridge, but Europeans don't do the whole tons of ice thing like they do in the US. If you enjoy sightseeing on a budget, you know how helpful those public toilets can be. After walking for hours, it's great to stumble upon a bathroom where you can freshen up a bit. Well, you better have the equivalent of 50 cents or so in your pocket, because in many European countries, you've got to pay to use these public restrooms. Even fast food restaurants might charge you for the privilege. The best workaround is to head to a mall. Their restrooms are usually free. Also, in the US, bathroom stalls often have a gap at the bottom. Some say this design was chosen for cleaning purposes and accessibility. In Europe, however, stalls tend to reach the floor for more privacy. Name days are also kind of a big deal in Europe, despite not being so popular in the US. Each day of the year is like a mini birthday celebration for someone with a specific name. Europeans who follow this tradition see it as a second birthday, and even some take it more seriously than their actual birthday. Even the way we perceive things can be totally different depending on where you're from. Take a 100-year-old building in Europe that's practically brand new, but in the US, it's considered old. Depending on who you ask, some Americans might even consider an object that is 200 years old to be ancient. Europeans reserve this word for something that comes from a time before the Middle Ages. However, when it comes to distances, it's quite the opposite. Europeans might find driving 100 kilometers, or about 60 miles, to be a lot, while for Americans, that's a short trip. It does make sense if you think about it though, because Europe is way more crowded. In fact, the entire European Union is only about half the size of the US. Either way, Europeans are always on the move, whether it's inside their continent or jetting off somewhere else on the planet. It's probably because most European countries are so small by comparison that people grow up thinking it's normal and easy to cross borders all the time. Even the appliances tend to be different when comparing the two regions. Take washing machines, for instance. In Europe, most of them only hook up to cold water, and they load from the front. In the US, it's common to have machines that use both hot and cold water and load from the top. On that note, make sure to research the type of electrical plug used in your European country of choice before traveling. You might find you'll need special adapters to be able to use your phone charger or curling iron while on holiday. Thankfully, most hotels are prepared for these issues and can offer adapters on demand, free of charge. Fridges might seem a bit different too. That's because tiny ones are the norm in Europe, except for large families who invest in bigger fridges and freezers. It's not all bad, especially if you enjoy sharing groceries with roommates, less food wastage, and more frequent trips to the store for fresh food. Might also want to polish your metric system knowledge before heading to Europe too. Everyone there is using meters, grams, liters, and Celsius. Sure, people in the US might learn the metric system in school, but they stick to the other system for their everyday lives, with yards, miles, pounds, and Fahrenheit. Make sure you also double-check dates and times before making any reservations. Europeans write their dates like day, month, year, while Americans flip it to month, day, year. Also, in the US, the week usually begins on Sunday and wraps up on Saturday. But in Europe, it starts on Monday and ends on Sunday. Be on the lookout for the different time format too. In some countries, if someone says it's 14, that translates to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Even advertising might seem a bit different when you first land in Europe. In the US, you might see people wandering around in inflatable costumes on the street to promote local business, but that's a rare sight in Europe. Also, those massive billboard signs you often see along American highways aren't available in most European countries. They're usually against the law because it's believed that drivers should be focused more on the road ahead. and such advertising techniques can be too distracting. Moving on to street names and shopping hours. In North America, especially the USA, it's common to name streets with numbers, like 5th Avenue or 16th Street. But if you head over to Europe, you'll find that streets usually have actual names. In some really rural spots in Europe, you might even stumble upon roads with no names at all. In Europe, there's also a cool tradition of naming roads that connect cities after the city they lead to. Shopping hours in Europe can be a bit confusing too, at times even frustrating. You've probably heard of the siesta in Spain, with some Mediterranean countries having similar customs. It's when shops and businesses take a little afternoon break. Smaller venues in European cities might close up for lunch breaks or have shorter hours on weekends. Some might even stay shut altogether on specific days. It's best to check out the local schedule if you're planning some retail therapy while traveling in Europe. Those shopping hours can really affect your plans and how easily you can get your hands on the stuff you need. While Americans tend to smile more, even to strangers, it can seem a bit unusual to people from other countries. There's a reason behind it though. You see, over the years, the US became this melting pot with people coming in from all over the globe. Being friendly and agreeable became crucial to bridge the gaps created by different cultures and languages. Sometimes it's more helpful to be nice than to be brutally honest. TV watching preferences can also seem different in Europe. Take Norway, for example, where you'll find this cool concept called slow TV. You know how we sometimes zone out in front of a show for hours? Well, Norwegians have turned that into a national sport, if you'd like. Think of it as the visual equivalent of background music. None of us get glued to the screen watching hours of wood burning or knitting marathons. But you might want to check it out when you need some background entertainment that doesn't demand your full attention. Speaking of taking things slow, you might have also heard about a concept called hygge. It's this whole way of life up in the Nordic European countries. Some think these life principles could be the secret to happiness. It's about creating a life that's free from annoying or overwhelming stuff. It's also about prioritizing your relationships and striving to always have a positive attitude.
Store your cotton buds in a toothpick bottle. This type of packaging usually has a dispenser in the lid. It will allow you to pull out one cotton bud at a time, and you can be sure the remaining supply of your hygiene items is protected from dirt and water. Pretty handy, especially on the road. A toothpick container is also a great storage solution for glitter. Let's say you're going to a music festival. Put your glitter in the bottle and pour the needed amount through the small holes in the lid when you need it, and the rest of the time, the lid will protect your bag from spills. If you don't trust the design of your toothpick container, use some tape to secure the lid to the bottom part before you go. The ring holder on your phone case makes it easy to use your device with one hand. You can send texts, take selfies, and watch videos while lying on your sofa. But it turns out that ring holders can also help with cooking. Remove the ring and attach it to a standard metal jar lid. Place the lid vertically on the food you're currently slicing and hold it this way. Your fingers will be protected from accidents and the slices will be evenly sized. Tea candles usually come in small aluminum cups. When the wax burns out, you can take 2 cups and make a tiny box for storing small items, such as pushpins, jewelry, paper clips, and so on. First, remove the remaining wax. Clean the cups and make 2 small triangle folds opposite each other. This will make the diameter of the bottom cup slightly smaller than that of the top one. This top cup will serve as a lid. You can also use a small piece of tape to secure it to the bottom part. When you're going on vacation, you can store mini soap, picnic spices, vitamin pills, and earplugs in such boxes. Don't forget to mark them with a permanent marker or stickers to avoid confusion on the way. A plastic toothbrush container makes a great travel box for small jewelry or memory cards. No need to spend tons of money on a fancy phone holder. Fold the temples of your sunglasses this way and put them on a flat horizontal surface. Now you can put your phone inside the emergency holder and shoot your TikToks right away. If you have an empty Tic Tac container at hand, this phone holder idea is for you. Cut the box into equal vertical parts, like this. Prepare a piece of cardboard slightly larger than your phone. Glue the Tic Tac halves to the cardboard so that your phone fits perfectly in the middle of this construction. Voila! Also, feel free to make the same holder for your tablet. But make sure that your gadget isn't too heavy for this construction. Here's another budget idea. Don't rush to throw away an empty tape roll. Use a ruler to mark 2 points on the opposite sides of the roll. Then, cut out 2 small inches that will hold your phone. Perfect balance and almost zero waste. Cut used plastic straws into small rings. Put 2 to 3 tablespoons of this stuff on a clean sheet of paper. Then place a sheet of paper on top of it and iron the whole thing. The rings will stick together into a single piece of plastic. Cut out an even circle and you can use it as a coaster for glasses and mugs. Use a meat beater to decorate your cookies. Place equal balls of dough on a baking tray. Now press them down with your favorite side of the beater. You can dip the beater in cinnamon before doing this to add flavor to your cookies. After baking, you'll get a pattern that can be covered with cream or honey. A simple plastic bottle cap can make a great emergency soap tray. Butter from the fridge is usually too hard and cold to use right away. There's a way to speed up the process. Fill a large mug with hot water and wait until the material it's made of heats up. Then pour the water out and cover the butter with the mug. The surface of the butter will melt and you'll be able to spread it on your toast with no problem. And if you need to soften the entire piece for baking, cut the butter into small pieces and hold them under the hot mug for a bit longer. You can reuse a plastic lid of wet wipes. Remove it from the package and stick it to the hard cover of a sketchbook or a notepad. Now you have a pocket to store small stationery. Or you can secure 2 plastic lids together and get a comfy travel box for pills, earplugs, and other small objects. If you have a lot of old Lego pieces that you don't use, don't throw them away. Build a fancy birdhouse or a colorful pot for home plants. You don't need to use a single nail to build this storage system. Use double-sided tape or glue to stick a flat Lego panel on the wall next to your entrance door. Add this specific Lego piece to every keychain that belongs to you and your roommates. Now you can store all your keys in one place. Lego also makes a great book holder or a stand for mugs and candles. Have you run out of picture frames? No problem. Use 2 large clothespins as a stand. Attach them to the bottom edges of your image, and a creative picture frame is ready. You can make it more stable by gluing the photo to a piece of cardboard. You can also use the same construction as a napkin holder when you're dining outdoors. Remove the dispenser from your dishwashing gel or facial toner. Wash it very thoroughly. Now you can use it in the kitchen to squeeze ketchup and other sauces from the bottom of a bottle. Also, this device is handy when you decorate pastries with cream patterns. If you need an emergency dog bed, take a clean tire and put it in a large pillowcase. Add some toys and pillows. There you are. If you don't have any tires, a life buoy will also work. Here's an easy way to stay warm and cozy on a frosty night. Fill several plastic bottles with hot water. You don't need to boil it. Hot tap water is fine. Make sure the bottles are closed properly and put them on your bed under the blanket. They'll heat up the mattress very soon. You can put socks on the bottles to not burn your skin. And if it's extremely cold, fill a large canister with hot water, wrap it in a wool sweater, and hug it. Sweet dreams! Want to know the best way to peel garlic? Put separated garlic heads in a saucepan and cover it with another saucepan. Now shake the entire construction vigorously, and the peel will fly off by itself. Don't rush to spoil your delicate cheesecake with an ordinary knife. Take a piece of dental floss, wrap its ends around your fingers, and cut your precious dessert without ruining its structure. This trick is also good for cutting jello, tiramisu, and soft cheese. And here's a brand new butter cutting technique we should all adopt. Use a large knife to make such stars on the surface of your butter. This will make it way easier to cut the product into smaller pieces because this way, the butter will melt faster. And these triangular-shaped pieces of butter will be perfect for your toast. Here's another recipe for space lovers. To liven your breakfast up, arrange 2½ sausages into a star and use toothpicks to help them keep the needed shape. Break a few eggs into the middle of the star and fry this with the lid on until it's ready. Bon appetit! Use a potato or vegetable peeler to cut hard cheese. It seems that they're meant to be together.
There are days when we feel tired and energy drained even after a good night's sleep. Fatigue and apathy may have a wide variety of reasons that differ for all people. Even a small solar storm 93 million miles away from the Earth can make your neurons work weaker. Studies have revealed that solar storms are so massive that they can desynchronize our biological clock and cause excessive sleepiness and laziness. That's because electromagnetic activity generated by the disturbance of the sun influences the pineal glands in our brains. Although this gland is very tiny, it plays the role of a big boss in your endocrine system. The pineal gland regulates many vital functions in the human body. One of its key responsibilities is to collect information about the exterior lighting and release melatonin. This hormone helps us relax and go to sleep. Abnormal electromagnetic activities cause excessive production of melatonin, which can result in fatigue and sleepiness even in the middle of the day. But don't rush to put on a handmade tinfoil hat. Luckily, we have some universal tips that you can try at home to reboot your energy levels. No worries, you don't have to buy any expensive special equipment. All you need is your own body and 2 minutes of your precious time. Place all fingers of both your hands together except for your thumbs. Check whether the second joints of each finger are aligned up. Apply gentle pressure by squeezing the fingers together. Once you put the joint over the joint and bone on bone. Don't stop using force and keep pressing for 1 minute. At some point, you may feel changes in your sinuses, which are the hollow spaces behind your eyes, cheekbones, and in your forehead. You may feel a gradual release of pressure in this area, and your nose may even begin to leak. If you try this exercise with someone else, you'll probably notice that the symptoms are different for different people. After 1 minute, release your fingers and relax your arms completely. Well, can you feel any changes in your body? Some of you may hear a slight ringing sound in the ears, experience dripping from the eustachian tubes, or think that the area around your cheekbones and forehead became lighter. You can use this trick anytime during the day when you feel the need to recharge your battery and restore your inner peace. You can exercise even in the middle of a school test, first date with your crush, or during a stressful business meeting. No one's gonna know, it'll be our secret. This refreshing effect appears thanks to our wise and complicated anatomy. Reflexology works so well because the nervous system in your hands is directly interconnected with your head, brain, and sinuses. Hands are rich in particular pressure points that can be very helpful when you need an emergency tool to release pain and reboot your brain. When you simulate one of these reflexology points, neurotransmitters in your brain inevitably react. It means that you can trick your brain and make it tell the body to feel good and enthusiastic. And it's absolutely free, if you know the right button, of course. So let's dive into the world of superpowers hidden in your hands and explore some of the major points. But if you're currently pregnant, be careful and get your doctor's approval before working with these points. Reflexology might stimulate blood pressure changes in your body and cause an unnecessary hormonal response. One of the points is located over here on your anterior forearm. Its name is Naiguan, or pericardium 6, because it's part of the so-called pericardium channel that stretches inside the arm from the armpit area up to the middle finger. You can find the Naiguan point between the tendons by measuring 4 fingers below your wrist. If you can't see the area between the tendons clearly, clench your fist. tension in your arm will make the tendons more obvious. Now, open your fist, relax the hand, and massage this depression once the point is detected. Apply gentle pressure for 4 to 5 seconds. Do this exercise equally on both hands and see if you feel any difference. You can also massage the entire area afterwards to relax the arm if necessary. During this exercise, you should start feeling relaxation that can spread all through the inside of the arm and across into the inside of the chest. If you don't feel any difference, don't get upset and just try again later. Acupuncture masters work with this point to help people feel more energized and focused, ease an upset stomach and headaches, and help release discomfort in the arms and chest. Some say it's also good for reducing anxiety and travel sickness. Acupressure works by balancing the body's energy flows. These techniques work better when you're completely relaxed. If you're performing this exercise on someone else, you may want to ask them to lie down and let them relax completely. There's another magical pressure point nearby called Zhongzhou. It can help ease neck tension, temporal headaches, and shoulder and upper back pain. This point is usually pretty easy to detect. It's located behind the knuckles in the groove shaped by the tendons of the ring and little fingers. Apply firm pressure to this depression for 4 to 5 seconds. You should feel pleasant flows of relaxation in the arms and cervical spine. Here's another magical button that is very helpful when experiencing anxiety or headache. Find this pressure point in the webbing between your thumb and index finger. Use your index finger and thumb to apply firm pressure to the webbing between your other hand's thumb and index finger. Slowly and gently massage the point for 4 to 5 seconds and then change hands. If you still feel drained after stimulating all the mentioned pressure points, it's time to look around. Chances are that the weather is to blame for your fatigue. If you're in a warm car outdoors on a sweltering day or in a hot classroom, it's pretty natural to feel tired and sleepy. Although we know that heat makes us tired, not many know why exactly. First of all, when it's hot, your body begins to send fluid and blood to the surface of your body to cool down. This process spends some of your body's resources, which can leave you feeling tired. Secondly, keep in mind that dehydration always causes sleepiness and fatigue. When it's hot, your body quickly loses salt and fluid in the form of sweat. Sometimes it's not the heat that makes you feel drained, but rather water misbalance that happens as a result. So drinking sufficient water is crucial if you want to feel energized during the day. And if you prefer stimulating your brain with coffee, remember that caffeinated drinks may act like a diuretic, which means that they can cause slight dehydration within your body. Therefore, it's recommended to be careful with consuming too much coffee and drink still water to replenish the natural balance. Speaking of temperatures, studies have revealed that too cold or too hot a workplace can make it difficult for office workers to focus on their daily duties. In one of the surveys, 22% of workers complained that too hot a workspace negatively affected their concentration, and another 11% of polled people said that too cold a workplace made it hard to work. Those temperature preferences may vary depending on a person's metabolic rates and physiological habits. Helsinki University of Technology and the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory researched and discovered the highest productivity temperature. It's about 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Meanwhile, if the temperature rises higher to around 74 degrees Fahrenheit, the overall enthusiasm at the workplace begins to fall. So, if you're not satisfied with your workplace temperature, it makes sense to dress in layers or move to a conference room where you can adjust the air conditioner as you like. Perhaps it will help you boost work productivity. And if not, remember the magical reflexology tricks we discussed earlier.
Don't waste time trying to save money. In many cases, you can use this precious time to earn more money than you're trying to save. For example, you spend several hours a day commuting to your workplace, but it might be more profitable for you to find an apartment closer to your office. Then you could spend your free time on something more productive, like studying or having some more work done. Once you have some extra cash, you can use the opportunity to choose. You can keep doing menial tasks, or you can pay someone to do it for you and concentrate on higher value projects, and then you're likely to end up making much more money in the future. Try to have a financial cushion that will allow you to lead the same lifestyle for at least several months if you stop getting money. The best way is to find some source of passive income. For example, if you become a property owner, you'll get rent every month, and you won't have to do anything. You can write an ebook, then you'll get royalties. You can also get passive income after investing in real estate, shares, or securities. Rich people rarely spend their money on life coaches. They usually have a lot of life experience of their own, and they know that to achieve something in life, you need to have a goal and enough willpower to reach it. If a person isn't ready for hard work, no motivational speaker can make them successful. That's why most life coaches target people with low income and aren't at the height of their careers. Those tend to believe that there is a magic pill which can change their life for the better. Always get your contracts in writing. Rich people don't just go into business with a handshake deal. It's the poor who tend to shy away from signing any agreements. It happens either for a lack of legal knowledge or because they don't want to come across as greedy and paranoid. But then there's a chance that your partner may remember your deal differently, or there might be a misunderstanding you won't be able to clear up, all because you don't have the terms in writing. The wealthy rarely overspend. Even if one of them is out there buying a Lambo, their decision is based on their goal and financial status at the moment. A person doesn't become rich because they're great at spending money. You need to be good at keeping it. Try taxing yourself by transferring some money to a separate account. Unfortunately, it's all too easy to dip into your savings once you need or want something really badly. But when you pay taxes, you don't get your money back. And once you start to receive your savings as taxes, you won't be able to waste this money so easily anymore. Rich people first add value to themselves and then to the world. They start with improving their own skills and their quality of life. This can help you convince others you're worth a hefty paycheck, because in return, you can add value to their lives. You shouldn't focus on saving more money. A much better thought is, how can I earn more? Wealthy people understand there's a limit on how much money one can save, but there's no limit on how much you can take. The wealthy rarely spend a fortune on grooming. There are successful business people and billionaires who are known to cut their hair on their own. Others have their hair treated when they visit developing countries. Rich people try hard to steer clear of junk food. These days, the wealthy prefer simple and healthy foods. Junk food is high in cholesterol and carbs and low in vitamins and minerals. That's why eating junk food regularly may lead to unpleasant consequences. And rich people know it's often cheaper to prevent a problem than spend a fortune solving it. People who have their mind on becoming rich don't rent, they buy. When you rent an apartment, you literally pay someone else's mortgage. They do take some financial risk in case some repairs are needed. But on the whole, the apartment owner both makes money and gains assets, while you give them your money and simply occupy their space. It's not a great investment. Sure, buying your own property isn't a piece of cake, but if you manage to do it, you'll be one step closer to getting rich. The wealthy don't try to save money when it comes to health. They pay high annual fees for concierge medicine to get help anytime they need it. And rich people never look for cheaper healthcare prices or bargains. The wealthy avoid getting saddled with late fees. It's a waste of money they could otherwise save. They automate their payments. This way, they don't have to deal with high penalty rates. Wealthy people don't sleep in. They have too much on their plate every day and use all the benefits of waking up early. One study found out of 44% of rich people get up 3 hours before their work starts, and only 3% of the poor do the same. The rich do not just buy new things, they invest. They pay for costly kitchen appliances not because they like wasting money. Wealthy people know high-quality things usually serve longer, and they essentially save money by buying a more expensive thing. That's why they think not about the deal they could get, but about the cost per use. Never compare yourself with others. Social media these days is a powerful tool that can also make you feel lonely, unhappy, and worthless. And this prevents you from concentrating on your own goals. Rich people prefer to compare themselves to their past selves, not to other people. It makes them feel accomplished and confident. Value for money is one of the most important life rules for wealthy people. Even if they decide to spend millions on a home, they bargain like anyone else. But some rich people go beyond that and choose to live in modest, inexpensive houses. Or they buy promising real estate while it's still inexpensive. And when its price skyrockets, they make a good profit. Almost 80% of rich people do physical exercise at least 4 times a week. It's crucial for those who spend most of their time in the office. Besides keeping you in good shape, regular workouts boost your energy and mood. You sleep better and become more productive. While searching for a job, most people pay attention only to the size of their potential salary, but others try to figure out what new knowledge they can get in their new position and how useful it can be later. Sometimes, it's better to accept a job offer from a famous company with a lower starting salary. This will give you an opportunity to build a career and earn much more money after some time. More than 60% of rich people listen to audiobooks or podcasts while they commute or have free time. The main idea is to make your brain work by feeding it something inspirational or educational. Rich people know there's no need to buy a pair of jeans that costs $1,000 if you can find a high-quality alternative that's 10 times cheaper. The same goes for other purchases. The wealthy don't blindly follow the latest fashion trends. They don't buy up new collections just because those are popular today. This isn't the best money investment. But what might be even more important, rich people don't feel the need to prove anything to other people. You have to overcome your modesty and promote yourself. Most people think bragging about their accomplishments and skills will drive others away. But in business, if you want to succeed, it's often absolutely necessary to put yourself out there. Never stop learning. People whose goal it is to become successful keep trying to get as much knowledge and experience as possible. They understand that learning is a lifelong process, and some new information can make all the difference when it comes to remaining poor or making a fortune. Rich people know their budget and can manage their money. They don't overspend. If they use a credit card, they do everything to avoid paying finance charges. By the way, only 8% of wealthy people have more than one bank card, and 77% of low-income earners carry several credit cards in their wallets. But the more cards you have, the more fees you have to pay, and the more difficult it is to keep track of your spendings.
Hey, if you're using your phone to watch something and are tired of propping it up and having it fall back down, try using your sunglasses. Simply place them upside down and use the parts that go around your ears to hold the phone in place. You can put old newspaper at the bottom of your trash bags to absorb food juices. This way, when you come to take out the trash, you don't get that gross liquid dripping onto your floor. If you have flowers that are starting to droop, try placing a copper coin in the water. Copper is a natural fungicide, so adding a penny to the water helps protect your flowers from bacteria. This way, your flowers will stay fresh for longer. You can use the spring from an old pen to stop your charger's wire bending and fraying. Just take out the spring and wrap it around the top of the wire near the connector. Moving objects through a door when it keeps closing is super annoying. So instead, tie a rubber band around the handle on each side of the door so that it crosses over the latch. The latch then won't be able to pop out and the door won't lock shut. You can use a paper clip to find the end of your tape. Simply place the clip under the end of the tape and you'll never have to hunt again. To check whether your bed sheets are fully dried, take a mirror and place it underneath. Leave it there for around 5 minutes, and if it steams up, it means the sheets are still damp. A damp bed can be a breeding ground for mold and other nasty fungi. Running a Post-it note over your laptop keyboard will help get rid of the built-up grime and any pesky bits of food. Now wait, you don't actually eat at the computer, do you? Instead of filling your purse or wallet with store loyalty cards, you can take a photo of them. Just take one snap of the barcode as well as a picture of the front so you know which card it is. Then, when you visit the store, just scan the barcode on your phone to collect your points. Forgot to put your drink in the fridge? Wrap a wet paper towel around it and put it in the freezer. In just 15 minutes, your drink will be ice cold. You can paint the end of your keys with different colored nail polish so you can easily identify which key is which. To stop your wrapping paper from unrolling, you can cut open an old toilet paper roll and use it as a cup. In order to pour the perfect amount of oil or salad dressing, poke holes in the foil seal rather than removing it completely. This prevents a big amount rushing out quickly. To prevent Band-Aids from slipping off your finger, cut a line on either side. The Band-Aid, not the finger. This will create 4 smaller sticky strips rather than one large one, and it will be much easier to secure. When your candle is burned down and the wick is difficult to reach with a lighter, you can use a stick of spaghetti. Just light the end and you'll have a longer stick that burns just as well, so you can get to those hard-to-reach places. Secure a rubber band over the top of your paint can so that you can wipe excess paint onto it. This stops paint running down the sides of your can and keeps things neat and tidy. If you're struggling to get your taco shells to stay in place, use a muffin tray. Flip the tray upside down, spray it with oil, and place your tortillas in the gap. Cook them for around 10 minutes at 700 degrees for the perfect crispy taco shell. You can use a water bottle to separate egg yolks. Hold the bottle over the yolk and squeeze it to suck the yolk up. Drop it into a separate bowl and you're good to go. Looking for a lost earring or pin on the floor? Place a stocking over the end of your vacuum and move it over the floor. The small object will get picked up without getting vacuumed. Next time you're struggling to clean your ceiling fan, use a pillowcase. Slide the pillowcase over each blade to wipe off the dust. This way, excess dust is caught inside the pillowcase and won't rain down on you. Poke a straw through your cherries to remove the stems. It's much quicker, and this way you don't waste as much fruit. If you're struggling to put a bracelet on your own hand, try using a paper clip. Open up the paper clip and slip it through the loops on the end of your bracelet. Hold the clip in the middle of your hand with your fingers, then flip the bracelet around your wrist. You should then be able to easily clasp it shut. To properly clean your blender, fill it with soap and hot water. Switch it on for around 10 seconds and let the swirling water do the hard work. Then just rinse it off and it's clean. Put down a strip of masking tape before nailing into plaster walls. The tape should stop the plaster from flaking or spreading dust all over the floor. When you're heating up leftovers, make a space in the middle with a spoon. The food will heat up much more evenly. Avoid the mess and frustration of peeling an orange by slicing off one end of the fruit. Then cut 4 to 6 slices and you'll find the peel will come off much easier. If you're struggling to use your butter because it's too cold, try using a cheese grater. Just grate the butter to make your life much easier. You can make a DIY garden sprinkler using an old plastic bottle. Punch some holes all over the bottle and then tape it to the end of your hose pipe. If your shoes smell bad, put a few dry tea bags into the shoe. The tea bags will absorb the smell. Potato chips are a perfect fire starter. The fat, oil, and chemicals inside make them super easy to burn. And yet, we still eat them. Can you see the irony? Try using toothpaste to remove small scratches on furniture. Rub a pea-size amount on the scratch in a circular motion until the scratch buffs out. Then wipe it with a damp cloth and voila! Candle wax that's been spilled on furniture can be removed with ice cubes. Rather than ruining the finish by trying to scrape it off, fill a plastic bag with ice and let it sit on the wax for a few minutes. The wax will then cool and harden, making it much easier to pick off. Drill a couple of small holes in the bottom of your trash can to stop the bag getting stuck when you pull it down. The holes stop the vacuum-like effect that keeps the bag pinned down. Crayon marks on the wall are a parent's nightmare, but you can use a hairdryer to get them off. Heat the marks for a few seconds to soften the wax, and then you should be able to just wipe it away. If you don't have the correct size coin to put in your shopping cart next time you go to the supermarket, you can use your key instead. If you have a key with a rounded end, you can insert that where the coin would go and the cart should unlock. You can easily remove the sticky residue from jars using cooking oil. Soak a cotton pad in some oil, then rub it on the sticky area. Allow it to sit for a few minutes, then it should wipe away easily. Attach a clothespin just under the head of your toothbrush to stop it from falling onto the dirty countertop. Maybe you should also clean your dirty countertop. To stop heavy flower pots from damaging your surfaces, stick furniture sliders to the bottom of the pot. You can use hair conditioner to make that new wool sweater less itchy. Just soak it in lukewarm water with a couple of tablespoons of conditioner and leave it for 15 minutes. Then just dry it and your sweater will be much softer. You can even wear it while you clean your dirty countertop.
Leaving your valuables or a chocolate bar in a car is a no-brainer. But there are other things people often overlook. Here's what to watch out for before leaving your car. Number 1 is aerosol cans, hairspray, deodorant, spray paint, household cleaner, and that sort. On the back of these cans, you might notice a storage temperature recommendation. Well, stick to that. Here's what can happen. Since these cans are pressurized, they become more sensitive to temperature. What's inside the aerosol may expand, and this may result in a crack, and then the can can blow up. Temperatures above 100 degrees Fahrenheit are already alarming, and it can easily get as hot as that in your car on a warm summer day. Researchers from the USA have figured out how long it takes a car to turn into a sweat factory on a hot day. Within 1 hour, the insides of the car parked in the sun reaches 95 degrees Fahrenheit or hotter, with an average temperature of 116 degrees Fahrenheit. So, if you want your car in one piece and running, take aerosol cans with you. The second item is sunscreen. Sunscreen is vital for your skin since it decreases the risk of skin complications and prevents skin aging caused by the sun. This includes wrinkles, sagging, and age spots. But when you leave sunscreen in your car, it gets exposed to high temperatures, and it can ultimately shorten its shelf life. If you end up finding spoiled sunscreen, you might notice a funny smell when you open the cap. Plus, the heat might cause the cap to open, and the sticky substance will get all over the car. The same rule applies to lipsticks and other cosmetics as well. The next one is plastic bottles. There are 2 reasons why you shouldn't leave them inside your car. Firstly, a plastic water bottle can act as a lens, magnifying the sun's rays and starting a fire. A fire department in Oklahoma conducted an experiment and confirmed that the danger of fire was real. David Richardson from that department says it can happen if the beam of light is focused enough. The second reason is related to your health. Many plastic bottles contain bisphenol, a potentially toxic compound. The BPA levels can increase at high temperatures, and that can be harmful to your body. There's a chance that this chemical can get into your drink after you leave the bottle inside the vehicle. Oh, and batteries. They can lose their capacity to work at full power when they're left abandoned in the car. You can buy a new pair and fix this problem, but it won't be as easy to solve the problem of leakage or a rupture. It can be bad for your health because battery acid is dangerous when inhaled and highly corrosive. The reason for leakage is again related to high temperatures. Battery manufacturers recommend keeping their products at room temperature. This fact is partially related to batteries. It's about electronics. Have you ever realized how hot your phone can get when it's exposed to the sun? You're driving, and let's say, looking at the GPS on your phone. Even in this situation, your phone can heat up. What will happen to it after hours of sun exposure? Phone companies are strongly against customers leaving their devices in vehicles because they might shut down, get damaged, or, boom! Personal belongings are another priority on the list. A wallet or a handbag may come to one's mind first. Yet, a passport or even some change you leave near the passenger seat is sometimes enough to to attract a thief. Better to keep such stuff out of sight, for example, by storing it in the trunk instead of leaving it in the back seat. Number 7 is also related to theft. Life can be too hectic sometimes, and it's understandable if you can't clean your car frequently, but leaving garbage in the car is another mistake. Thieves tend to search for messy-looking cars. They think that the owner doesn't use such a vehicle frequently. How about plants? I know it isn't that common to keep plants in the car on a daily basis, but sometimes you need to move them. The heat inside the vehicle can easily dehydrate the poor thing. Medications are another thing you shouldn't keep in the car for too long. The constantly changing temperatures inside the vehicle can decrease the effectiveness of your pills. Authorities recommend keeping most medications at 59 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit in a cool and dry place. Important documents that contain your personal data shouldn't be left in the vehicle either. Some examples of such documents are tax forms, financial statements, and school transcripts. A thief could commit fraud or identity theft using this valuable information. And there's also food and drinks. Experts recommend not leaving groceries or leftovers in a warm car for more than 2 hours, or only an hour when it's over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The same rule applies in the winter too. Canned foods, for example, have a high risk of going bad. If a can of sweet peas, let's say, gets frozen in the car, the effect will be similar to what would happen to soda. Let it thaw in the refrigerator instead of leaving it at room temperature. If the product doesn't look or smell normal, throw it away in a place where not even an animal can find it. Don't try to taste it, just trust your senses. If the item seems rusted or there are some cracks in the can, it should end up in the trash too. Eggs are another example. Normally, eggs shouldn't be frozen. But let's suppose you forgot one grocery bag in the trunk of the car, and the weather was so cold at night that the eggs got frozen. Keep the eggs in the refrigerator before use. They should be hard-cooked. It's your only option. You see, freezing causes the yolk to become thick and syrup-like. It loses that natural flow and doesn't mix well with other ingredients. You shouldn't leave your pets alone in the car, obviously, and not just because of a potential rise in temperature. They will feel uncomfortable without you, their best friend, accompanying them. In their frustration, they might do something to get noticed, which can be, for example, ruining the interior of the vehicle. Now let's return to the winter season again. If possible, keep the gas tank of your car over half full. This can prevent the fuel lines from freezing. It also makes it easier to start the engine and hit the road in the morning. While keeping an eye on the fuel bar, it might be a good idea to glance at the tire pressure too. The cold can result in tire pressure drops. Not only high, but also low temperatures can damage some items. A good example is paint cans. They should be quickly taken out of the vehicle in the winter. The ingredients in the paint can experience expansion, separation, and clumping due to the cold. In other words, you won't be able to use this paint anymore. Weather also affects wooden musical instruments like violins or guitars. Changes in temperature and humidity can cause wooden instruments to warp, crack, or split. Glasses get affected by fluctuating temperatures too. In a hot car, plastic frames can bend. Or plastic can become brittle when it's very cold. This makes glasses prone to breaking. Don't leave house keys and garage door openers inside the car. This is an everyday practice for many people, but it's risky. They can get into the wrong hands. To listen to music, most people connect their phones to the car or listen to the radio. CDs are getting less and less used these days, but don't leave them in the car anyway. They might get warped, and you won't be able to use them anymore. Can you think of any other items you shouldn't leave in the car?
Have you ever stopped to think about the thrilling secrets of day-to-day modern life on planet Earth? I'm talking about tiny windows in washing machines and little holes in airplane windows. If you haven't got a clue of what I'm talking about, tag along and allow yourself to be as surprised as I was when I found out. Remember the drawer at the bottom of your oven? Maybe you've been ignoring it all along or using it to store pots and pans. Well, even though it can serve this function, that's not the only thing it's there for. The best way to use the bottom drawer is to keep your meal heated while you're waiting to serve it. Genius, right? Talking about secret doors, have you noticed that most washing machines have little flap doors at the bottom too? These doors actually serve as drain traps. It's where all the items that we put to wash together with our jeans and jackets go to. It's a type of collector, let's say, of small items. It stops them from getting into the main drain pipes and clogging them. It saves us hundreds of dollars in repairs each month. Now, who hasn't gone through the confusing task of having to measure how much pasta to cook for one serving? Well, here's the solution: the holes in the center of pasta spoons. They were actually made for measuring the exact amount of dry pasta you need for one serving. If you try stuffing wet cooked pasta through it, well, good luck with that. On a similar topic, have you ever wondered why pen caps have holes in them? Maybe you thought it was a design feature to regulate air pressure. But in reality, these holes have a much simpler and more important function: to reduce the risk of choking. Now, lots of people love to bite on their caps, and this tiny hole prevents them from choking in case they accidentally swallow a cap and it gets stuck in their throat. For kitchen lovers, there's a hidden secret right in front of your eyes that can change your life. Think pans. Now think handles. Right, they have holes in them. As it turns out, these holes were designed to hold the spoon you're using for cooking. And instead of dripping sauce all over the stove or your kitchen floor, you can place the spoon in the hole and let it drip the sauce directly back into the pan. Woohoo! Speaking of everyday items, and most doorknobs are made of brass because this material makes them naturally germ-free. Unlike plastic ones, brass doorknobs are kind of magical. They can disinfect themselves without you having to clean them. Neat, right? Have you ever noticed that at the bottom of a measuring tape there is a little dip? You can find it in that metallic part you need to pull on to measure something. Well, that dip is actually the exact size of a regular nail. It was designed for people to place the tape on top of a nail and use it as a support while they stretch the tape. Well, I can't wait to try it out for myself. As for the margins in your notebook, they were invented to protect people's notes from mice. No, the mice weren't copying your answers for the math quiz. Actually, there were times when people had to cohabitate with rats and mice that often chewed on paper. So, to prevent information from getting completely lost, people created margins. This way, texts were moved closer to the middle of pages and remained unharmed by rodents. Perhaps this is where to digest information came from. And what about those tiny holes at the bottom of airplane windows? They have an extremely important function of regulating the air pressure inside the cabin. In other words, they help planes fly high up in the sky. Big responsibility, right? By the way, tray tables on an airplane are the germiest places inside the entire cabin. Studies showed that the trays had 8 times the amount of germs on the toilet flush button. Now, how about we cut a commercial airplane in half and see what's inside? Well, it would look more or less like this: rows of seats on top and everything else that needs to be stored at the bottom. I'm talking about passengers' luggage, emergency supplies, parts of the wing system, and so on. Moving on to bowling balls. Yes, I know it's a clumsy transition. Anyway, have you ever wondered what the insides of a bowling ball look like? If you have cut a professional ball in two, you'll see a familiar shape. Look closely. Do you see it? Doesn't that look like the logo of Brightside? Anyway, professional bowling balls are different from the ones in your local bowling alley. That's because they're designed to make fancy moves. They actually have some really complex engineering inside. They're shaped to help skilled professionals get more strikes. The weight of professional bowling balls is designed to be projected inward as they travel down the bowling lane. This makes it harder for them to get into the gutters on the sides of the lane. Speaking of balls, let's take a look inside a baseball. To make it light and aerodynamic, producers use several different layers. Starting from the core, we have a cork center enveloped by black rubber. Then there's a layer of red rubber, followed by 2 or 3 alternating layers of wool yarn. After that, there's a visible white leather cover and that beautiful red seam on the side, stitching it all together. And what if you had X-ray vision and managed to look inside a human bone? Ooh, spooky! I'd say what calls most attention is this spiderweb-like situation at the center of the bone. In reality, it's a highly condensed and complex structure of nerves that you have inside your bones. Aren't you lucky? Now, I've got a riddle for you. What is round, can be found near the ocean, and looks like an aerial view of the Guggenheim Museum in New York City, the one that's made almost entirely of ramps? If you said a nautilus shell, hey, then you guessed right. A nautilus is a shellfish whose house you can find in countless souvenir stores near the beach. It's made up of 2 layers, a matte white outer layer and an iridescent white inner layer. And if you were to cut it in half, it would look very similar to the insides of the Guggenheim Museum. Aloe leaves are good for healing purposes and also for hydration. But if you managed to look inside of an aloe leaf, the image you'd see would be satisfying and very relaxing. Who hasn't dreamed of a pool filled with jelly? Now, there seems to be nothing more mundane and regular than a tube of toothpaste. But you wouldn't think so if you cut open a tube that contains several colors. Now, there have been speculations that the insides of such a toothpaste tube might be divided by barriers so that the stripes don't mix. But if you cut it in half, you'll see that it has only one interior chamber. As it happens, there's a lot of science behind the making of striped toothpaste. According to a specialist, they have to ensure that the paste in all the stripes has the same physical properties. This way, the colors are naturally prevented from mixing with one another. That's why, if you tear a tube open, you'll see something that looks like several slices of pizza in different colors. If you open your closet, you're bound to find at least a few wooden hangers. Usually, they're made of cedar wood, which is a natural moth repellent. So, cedar hangers actually protect your clothes from moth infestation. For some people, more than others, eyeliner is an everyday must. Boy, isn't it. But did you know that back in ancient Egyptian times, both men and women used kohl eyeliners to protect their eyes from the sun's glare? Way to go for the Egyptians for figuring that out. Now, if I could just learn to walk like one. Normally, we use headrests for the purpose of, well, resting our heads, right? Well, not only. As it turns out, headrests can be easily removed from the seats and used to break car windows in case of emergencies. Now, this one is a trick very few people know about. You probably place your doormat horizontally, like most of us do. But doormats serve the purpose of absorbing dirt from the soles of your shoes before you enter your home. So, for this function to work as it's meant to, the best way to place a doormat is vertically. This way, you take more steps on the top of the doormat before entering your house. And last but not least, now I don't want to be accusatory here, but you have probably been vacuuming your house the wrong way, and I can prove it. Most people just vacuum floors and carpets in one direction or move the brush back and forth several times, thinking they've got all the dust out. But according to cleaning professionals, the best way to vacuum is in rows. First, you go forward with the brush until you arrive at the end of the row. Then, you fluff the carpet up and move back down along the same row, gathering the dust that wasn't collected in the first sweep. Talk about efficient cleaning. On the other hand, my idea of house cleaning is to sweep the room with a glance. Hey, I don't want to disturb that protective layer of dust. You know, those fluffy cumulus clouds you see in the sky weigh as much as a Boeing 747 or 100 elephants. Hey, if you don't believe me, let's do the math. Scientists figured out that the density of water inside a cumulus cloud is around a half a gram per cubic meter. Now, clouds come in all sizes, but an average cloud of this type is shaped somewhat like a cube and has a volume of 1 billion cubic meters. When you multiply it by density, you get an impressive result of slightly over 1 million pounds. And in case you were wondering, this giant stays afloat because its density is lower than that of the air surrounding it. Giraffes are 30 times more likely to get struck by lightning than you are. There were 5 official fatal cases involving giraffes and lightning between 1996 and 2010. But since their population worldwide is just around 140,000 during that period, the fatality rate is rather high per 1,000 of giraffes per year. Lightning bolts love tall objects, so giraffes are unfortunately an easy hit. But scientists think they might have learned to deal with it and seek shelter during a thunderstorm or move quickly to thickly vegetated areas. The oldest animals on Earth are glass sponges. They can live up to 15,000 years. Scientists found the oldest glass sponge in the Ross Sea, a part of Antarctica. In another part of the world, the East China Sea, scientists found the skeleton of a glass sponge that lived for about 11,000 years. These sponges might have been around during the last ice age. They lived their whole lives stuck to hard surfaces, filtering water to snack on bacteria and plankton. So, our Earth is spinning more slowly now, which means our days are getting a bit longer over time. Long ago, I wasn't around then, a day on Earth was only about 19 hours, but then it grew to 24, mostly because the moon's gravity pulls on Earth and slows it down. Different extreme things go on in nature that can change the speed of Earth's spin in the short term. An earthquake in Chile in 2010 may have made our day a little bit shorter, according to scientists. But since 2020, the days have been getting longer again. Now, scientists still can't decide if water is actually wet or not. Some of them say water isn't wet itself, but it can make other things wet when it sticks to them. Others think water is wet because it's a liquid and has moisture. Water can feel wet because it cools your skin as it evaporates. How wet something is depends on 2 forces: cohesive forces that keep water droplets together and adhesive forces that make water stick to things. Water doesn't stick well to waterproof fabrics, and they stay dry because cohesive forces are stronger in that case. Guess what? There is no map of the world that would be 100% accurate unless it's life-size. Our planet is round and paper is flat. Duh! Back in the 16th century, Gerardus Mercator designed a cylindrical map projection that is still used and named after him. This concept is good for navigation because the north is always up, but the top and bottom parts get stretched out. So Greenland looks 14 times larger than it really is, and Alaska is the size of Brazil. Around 4 billion years ago, Earth's atmosphere was very different from what we know and love. But volcanoes saved the day. Tons of them were erupting all over the place, spewing out carbon dioxide. This gas filled the sky and made up most of the atmosphere. Tiny early plants used that carbon dioxide to grow by photosynthesis and give out oxygen. One of the theories says that the steam from all the volcanoes cooled down and turned into water and gave us the oceans. It took about 2 billion years for enough oxygen to fill the air so that animals could live and breathe here. Now, if for some reason you ever decided to stack all the world's germs and bacteria on top of each other, they would stretch for 10 billion light-years. But you wouldn't even see this thread, because it would be about 75 times thinner than a human hair. If you wrap this long line of bacteria around our galaxy, the Milky Way, it would circle around it more than 20,000 times. Ooh, my brain! It turns out there's rust on the moon, and it may have traveled all the way from Earth to get there. Now, rust usually needs oxygen and water to form, and the moon has almost none of either. But when this celestial body passes through a part of space called Earth's magnetotail, oxygen from Earth can reach it with solar winds. This oxygen may have combined with tiny amounts of water and iron on the Moon's surface to create rust. Now, even a tiny asteroid can knock our planet out of its orbit. But don't worry, you probably won't even notice any difference. The effect of an impact will depend on many things, like how strong the space rock is, how fast it's going, and what kind of ground it hits. Most of the time, when space rocks hit Earth, they break apart or turn to gas before they reach the ground. But big ones, like the one that wiped out the dinosaurs, can cause huge problems, like big waves, earthquakes, and even change the weather. The Earth isn't solid like a rock on the inside, but more like squishy clay because of the very high heat and pressure deep underground. This squishiness allows the mantle to move very slowly over millions of years, and that's why we get earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and the shifting of continents. During the last ice age, huge heavy glaciers sat on top of Earth's surface, pressing down on the squishy mantle underneath. This made the mantle sink a bit. When the ice melted, the mantle started pushing back up and the land began to rise again. Even today, in places like Canada, Greenland, and Scandinavia, the land is still rising because of this. Our planet is covered with cosmic dust. About 5,000 tons of it reach the surface of Earth every year. This interstellar substance is smaller than a grain of sand and often even thinner than a human hair. Scientists go all the way to the middle of Antarctica, where it barely snows, and the snow is super clean to spot those particles. Most of this dust comes from comets. If you're an introvert, Greenland is the ideal place for you. It is the least densely populated area in the world, with only 0.1 person per square mile. Wow, I've never actually seen a tenth of a person. Anyway, most of Greenland is covered in ice, so people live mainly along the west coast. Oh, and by the way, it's been inhabited for over 4,500 years, so it must not be that bad after all. Guess what? The ground you walk on is actually recycled. First, hot melted rock from magma comes to the surface and cools down to become solid rock. Then, thanks to tectonic forces, the rock gets pushed up to the surface. Over time, wind, rain, and other forces break pieces of the rock off. They get carried away and eventually settle down in layers. These layers get squished together, forming sedimentary rocks, like sandstone. Sometimes, if these sedimentary rocks get pushed deep under the Earth's surface, the heat and pressure cook them into a new type of rock called metamorphic rock. A long time ago, life on Earth might have been purple instead of green. A molecular biologist from the University of Maryland thinks that the very first microbes used a special molecule to capture sunlight that made them look purple. Today, plants are green because they use chlorophyll to absorb sunlight and turn it into energy. But before chlorophyll existed, retinal molecules did the same job. It soaked up green light from the sun and reflected red and purple light, which made the microbes look violet and like little tiny grapes. Really. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.